So let me tell you one of the best stories in the history of hip hop.
I almost wish he had come in there on that shit because I kind of lost like a little respect for the sentiment of the verse.
Yeah, and nothing been the same since they dropped Control and tucked the sense of the rapper back in his pajama clothes.
Was that real or was that just like for the people? You know what I mean?
I think it's a sparring kind of sport.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, you know, then let it be real then.
A story that's a culmination of a decade's worth of conflict.
If it's really everybody, then it needs to be everybody. It just can't be halfway for the sake of the people.
Glory.
You should get into a rap battle.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah, then that would be great. You're qualified.
And it would have to be warranted because it would be scathing. The bars would be scathing.
Turmoil.
Oh my God, who's gonna work with Kendrick now? Who's listening to Control now? Like, yo, Drake, stop whining, man. Shut the fuck up.
Pettiness.
Ha ha, joke's on you, high five. I'm bulletproof.
Jealousy. And a little bit of hate.
Let me say I'm the biggest hater. I hate the way that you walk, the way that you talk. I hate the way that you dress.
Maybe a lot of hate. That culminated in one of the wildest and most memorable weeks that hip hop has ever seen in the modern era or possibly any era.
What top 5 you smoking on, Kendrick? Cause my top 5 is Drake, 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 Drake.
I haven't been feeling really black today, so which is why I decided that I'm gonna be listening to some Kendrick Lamar until I get black to my old self.
This is my alter ego.
Anita Max win.
Drake the type of guy to say, now a silly one when taking group photos.
Just feeling so lucky and blessed that the fear of losing it at night.
I watched a lot of media about this epic moment in hip hop and pop culture history since first planning and recording parts of this video. Some of it's been really good and some not so good. Some people's biases lead them to poor and incomplete analysis. Some people barely tried to do any actual analysis at all and just threw out a video or article or tweet just to collect some coins on a hot trending topic. This is not that type of video. You might be wondering, is it really possible to have a meaningful conversation about a pop culture topic for 3 going on 4 whole hours? I don't know. We haven't finished editing yet, but the shit is long. Further, what could I possibly say that hasn't already been said on this over the last month of discourse around what happened? And the answer is a lot. No shade to all of my fellow commentary video essayist types that have tackled this, but unlike the vast majority of people who have already made content around this story, I was there for the entire story. I'm old. I was there at the beginning of Drake's story. I was there at the beginning of hip hop low key in general, and no shade to others who have made content around this. Not having a lot of the historical context of why this is a big deal leaves a lot to be desired from other people's takes and commentary on this story. Like a lot of Drake supporters and stans seem to think that this is all about jealousy and success or lack thereof. A lot of Kendrick supporters and stans seem to think this is about legacy and status for Kendrick. Outsiders of this culture just think this is a celebrity feud like any other. And no, none of those things actually capture the totality of why this beef was so significant to Black and hip hop culture or why it captivated people the way it did. This isn't just about one rapper not liking another rapper. This isn't just about jealousy or envy or pettiness. The core conflict of this beef isn't just about settling who the best rapper of a generation is. It's about dictating what hip hop is for generations to come and possibly rectifying what hip hop has been for generations past. To fully understand why this beef exists, why it captivated so many generations, you can't start in March of 2024. You can't even start in 2013 with Good Kid, Mad City. You can't start in 2009 when Drake signed to Young Money. You have to start earlier than that. Because if you don't, then you don't fully understand why Drake's existence as a whole is such a anomaly that many might find dangerous and toxic to what hip hop is and has been for the last decade and a half, and what Kendrick has been or what he's tried to be for most of that time. So you have to understand what hip hop was and is, what it might continue to be, and what it hopefully will be going forward. And both of these rappers represent 2 conflicting paths that hip hop has taken. And to understand all of that, you got to start at the beginning. So that's what we're going to do.
mixture of races, languages, and creeds. New York is unique because of the New Yorkers. And the best place to meet them is on the streets.
So let's get started and just kind of talk about the origins of hip hop and beef. For most of the 70s into the early 80s, we see hip hop in a raw and almost primordial state. No one quite knows what's happening or what they're doing, but they know something is happening. If you ask me, a lot of hip hop at this moment is much closer to the world of disco, which makes sense because that's partly its origin point. Hip hop originates out of a mixture of disco, street, and house party culture in New York. The inception considered being the moment DJ Kool Herc first scratched a record in 1973.
One night, I'm waiting for the record to play out. They're waiting for this particular break, and I have a couple more records got the same breakup in it. I wonder how would it be if I put them all together. And I told them, I said, I'm going to try something new tonight. I'm going to call it a merry-go-round.
Herc's merry-go-round meant that instead of playing whole records, he would play just the instrumental breaks, mixing between them to create a continuous dance rhythm.
It would take a little over a decade for the first acts that truly embody what we know as hip-hop to emerge. By the mid-'80s, we see the emergence of Rakim, LL Cool J, Kool Moe Dee, and probably the first huge crossover hit, Run DMC. And it's at this point that something incredibly significant happens in hip-hop.
Well, there have been talking blues and things like concertos for drums. But right now, all around us, and so compelling you never miss the fact there's no melody, is a music that is all beat, strong beat, and talk. It's rap music, whose records have sold millions of copies. The audience for rap music is really growing, and its use has broadened beyond mere entertainment.
It becomes an industry.
Rap music has been discovered by everybody from advertisers to educators to politicians.
And rappers and everyone around them start to see dollar signs in this new vibrant and radical art form. However, when these dollars come into play, we also see the emergence of hip-hop's gatekeepers and the slow disappearance of any radical traditions within the art form.
Images control perception. Young people, perception is everything. You have to study Nazi propaganda to understand what's going on with the transmission of media images. You have to know the fact of advertising and subliminal seduction. It ain't nothing new. You have to understand there's a guy called Noam Chomsky that influenced me to make Don't Believe the Hype. You got to understand, when they have a revolution in a country everywhere around the world, what's the first place they fucking attack? They take over the television station and the radio station.
The gatekeepers are a nebulous group of semi-coordinated power brokers within hip-hop culture, protecting what is essentially Black America's most valuable cultural commodity, our art. They are entrepreneurs who become record executives, radio DJs, and radio program directors, prominent bosses of criminal organizations, writers, club owners, etc. Some known long-standing gatekeepers are people like Ebro, radio host and former program director of Hot 97, or Big Meech, formerly of BMF or the Black Mafia family, a crime syndicate that was active in Detroit and Atlanta. Greg Street and Rico Wade also in Atlanta, Andre Harrell, Diddy, Steve Stout, and important to our story, a man named Jay Prince in Houston, more on him later as well. By the late 80s, hip-hop is becoming an international phenomenon, and the gatekeeper's role becomes to dictate who and what gets to be within that phenomenon.
When it comes to rap, I'm the epitome. The rapper's idol and my title is Kool Moe Dee.
Both to protect this valuable commodity for the sake of the people that created it, aka Black and brown people, underserved Black and brown people, with a sprinkling of white folks in there to be fair, as well as maximize its profitability to pretty much all white people who have nothing to do with hip-hop but own the means of production, run the corporations, run the music industry, and have all the money that these poor Black, brown, and sometimes white people are trying to get. These folks over here, the corporations, are the real owners of hip-hop by this time. Not the rappers, not the fans, not the culture, or even the gatekeepers. It's the industry itself and the corporate benefactors connected to it. Keep all of this in mind because it plays a significant role in pretty much how all of this plays out and why it plays out the way it does. Whenever you have hungry, underserved people, young people especially, vying for a set of resources, there's going to be conflict. And conflict was no stranger to hip hop. MC and DJ battles have been a big part of hip hop culture almost from the very beginning. And we're not just talking MCs and DJs, dancing, rivalries and graffiti art. Pretty much anything you can think of, there's a tradition of competitiveness that exists there.
Big gun, shoulder wide. My hands here, I hold this side. Two players, we had to split screens like it's GoldenEye.
However, as hip hop becomes a commercial entity, this competitive spirit changes, some might say even mutates, from a rivalry and competitive focus to beef and grudges. While rivalry and competition can often be friendly, beef pretty much never is. Thankfully, this has rarely led to direct violence between rappers and rival crews. Many famous rap beefs throughout time happened and ended amicably with minimal activity outside of music. LL Cool J and Kool Moe Dee, Roxanne Shante versus Sparky D, LL Cool J versus Cannabis, Nas versus Jay-Z, and so on. However, not every rap beef over this time was so lucky. During the beef between KRS-One's Boogie Down Productions and MC Shan and Marley Marr, an unrelated dispute broke out that resulted in the death of DJ Scott LaRock. Lil' Kim's beef with Foxy Brown spilled out into an altercation that resulted in a shootout that would eventually send Lil' Kim to prison. And of course, the beef between Notorious Big and Tupac raised bi-coastal tensions to a fever pitch, resulting in the as of yet unsolved murders of both rappers within a year of each other. Hip hop as an art form isn't inherently violent. Its origins aren't intrinsically connected to street violence and criminal activity, but the rise of gangster rap in the mid-80s and its heavy promotion by the gatekeepers at the behest of the record executives resulted in an atmosphere in the industry that persistently tread a fine line between fantastical performance art and real-life street activity. And even when no discernible beasts were involved, the street element within hip-hop culture and the industry has resulted in violence on many an occasion. But as a whole, hip-hop fans who by the early 2000s were more non-black than black, love the drama, love the idea of spectating on beef, and often fed rumors and conflicts into the culture with the hope of inciting more, something that will become an ugly tradition in hip-hop for the foreseeable future. To be fair, this is not unique to hip-hop. Celebrity feuds and beefs have always captivated the masses, regardless of the race of the figures or the nature of the conflict. However, hip hop sadly had the rare possibility of things escalating, or at a minimum, going from simple competitive rapping to personal attacks and the spreading of rumors, all while those on the outside were looking to spur it on. But I can't deny, when done right, the human drama of a rap beef has the ability to create some of the most memorable and impactful moments in any form of art, especially when it's hip hop's biggest and best willing to put their status on the line in order to prove who's better. And that is what we got when Kendrick Lamar took a direct shot at Drake. And to underplay how impactful that moment was would be to underplay hip hop as a whole.
It's the competitive thing, and it's also just like, I'm probably one of the few people that really lives this rap life. Like, I really live this rap life for real. I'm really like that.
I ran through the general backstory as quickly as I could. Y'all know me, but that's still just the general backstory of hip hop for those who just don't know. And I realize a lot of people that are younger don't know this stuff, partly because old heads like myself haven't bothered to teach it in a way that y'all appreciate. So hopefully y'all appreciated that. Either way, we're only really warming up. We got a lot to get to. What comes next is one Aubrey Drake Graham and why he was and is such a divisive figure in hip hop. A lot of people don't like Drake for a lot of reasons, and as an OG Drake hater, I have to point out that many of those reasons aren't all that good. They're not solid arguments against Drake and what he is. They often betray a misunderstanding of him and a misunderstanding of why his presence in hip hop was a problem to begin with. It's 2008 and Aubrey Drake Graham is trying to be possibly the most unlikely rap superstar in the history of hip hop.
It's been good so far, you know, definitely. I could have had a record deal already. I'm just looking for the right situation.
10 years earlier, the idea of someone like a Drake being a megastar in hip hop would have been unthinkable. But within those 10 years, before those 10 years, in fact, something major happened. hip hop changed. And that change was actually a person named...
Yo, this Kanye West right here.
2 words, Chi-Town, Southside, worldwide, cause I rep that till I...
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
1 waist, 2 desks, 1 wall, 20 plaques.
You ain't got the answers, man. You ain't got the answers.
I get his rhyme like should've been signed twice. Most
if you can communicate this product, you can make money off the product. Because look at Gaga. She's the creative director of Polaroid. I like some of the Gaga songs. What the fuck does she know about cameras?
By 2 words, fuck you, pay me. Screaming, Jesus, save me. You know how the game be. I can't let them change me. Cause on Judgment Day, you gon' blame me. Look, God, it's the same me.
I knew he's gonna wild out. I knew he's gonna do something crazy. Everybody want to know what I would do if I didn't win. I guess we'll never know.
Ever since the emergence of gangster rap, the aforementioned gatekeepers have required a level of realness and hardness from rappers in order for them to get access to true stardom. And this transitioned to the rise of gangster rap in the early 90s. Before that point, hip hop was much more varied in its presentation and more capable of fun and levity, even sensitivity, which as a black male dominated genre seems unthinkable now today, but that's because gangster rap flattened all of those other features of hip hop down to a singular thug image. Think DMX or Tupac or even Jay-Z to an extent, but there was always the PM Dawns, the Arrested Developments, the Diggable Planets, and so many others before gangster rap began to dominate. And this happened because the corporate interests that controlled hip hop recognized that the black thug image was the most marketable to white audiences, at least at that time, and that is until Kanye broke that mold.
Crazy. I can't even pronounce nothing. Pass that for Stacey.
Kanye West was not a thug. He was a weird arts kid who was into anime and obsessed with Akira. He could draw and paint and play the piano, but he decided that hip hop and rapping would be his medium of choice. He had a hell of a time getting everybody else to figure that out though.
We shine because they hate us, floss because they degrade us. We trying to buy back our 40 acres.
Because he wasn't really gonna fit into the gangster rap image that dominated hip hop when he first arrived. But after years, he eventually got a chance, and when he did, everything about hip hop changed. I've made 2 whole videos on Kanye's rise and fall. They'll be in the description. I probably need a 3rd one at this point for reasons I'm sure if you know Kanye, you already understand. But in that video, I didn't talk about the exact moment where the true shift in hip hop around Kanye occurred, which was a contest between Kanye and 50 Cent in, I believe, 2004. 50 Cent was a very traditional, typical hip-hop megastar. He was like a gangster rapper grown in a lab. In fact, the generic image of gangster rap that we often think of today that you may see depicted in movies and film is probably based off 50 Cent. He made his name by dissing other rappers. He was a former street thug, drug dealer, whatever his backstory is. He had survived being shot himself. He had big muscles. He even wore a bulletproof vest as shirts. Meanwhile, Kanye was literally at the end of a trilogy of albums talking about how hard it was for him to drop out of college and pursue his dreams. There couldn't be more of a contrast in terms of what hip hop was going to be at the time and going forward. 50 Cent had scheduled his album to be released on September 11, 2007, and Kanye was set to release a week later on September 18th. And then Kanye, doing what Kanye does, we just didn't know it was some Kanye shit at the time, decided he would move his release date up a week to be in direct competition with 50 Cent.
What was going through your head when you decided to release the same day as 50?
It took longer for the art, and we had to move the date back for the artwork alone. Then I said, let's just do 9/11, and he said 50 got that date. I said, okay, let's go.
This was genuinely not a good business decision. 50 was a rap superstar whose last 2 albums had been huge hits. And while Kanye had also had great releases and sold a lot of records, the thought was that he just wasn't meant to directly compete with someone like 50. He'd likely not just lose the contest, but also money in the process, as those with just enough money to buy one album would have to choose. This is, by the way, 15-ish, 17 years ago when streaming services weren't a thing. So if you wanted to hear an artist's new album, you had to go to the store and buy it for $10 to $15, which meant that hip hop fans that only had $20 to spare, they had to choose which album they were going to buy.
I mean, it's big for hip hop for us to be coming out on the same date, but Kanye West doesn't stand a chance. You know, I'm going to tell you that early.
And then Kanye outsold 50 Cent by several 100,000 units. In the moment, I don't think people understood how significant this was to hip hop, or specifically to the power of the gatekeepers. The gatekeepers had already been dealing with the diminishment of their powers by the advent of the internet, but now we had these non-traditional forms of hip hop beginning to overshadow the forms of hip hop that they were most in control of. To me, this is greatly the beginning of the end of the influence of the gatekeepers. Because see, the gatekeepers were powerful because they decided whose music got to the masses through controlling the venues where said music was actually played. Your music couldn't get on the radio or on TV or in the club without a gatekeeper's permission. But the internet began to allow for independent sharing of music, and so now someone like, say, a Wale could release the mixtape About Nothing via the internet that will become one of the best works of hip hop that year, if not that decade, and take up a ton of space in hip hop culture without ever getting permission from any particular gatekeeper. You could just go to a variety of mixtape download sites or your local gas station and you could find it there. And what that meant is that the gatekeepers and the record labels had to come to him on his terms to ask to sign him versus the other way around. And this isn't just hip hop, this reverts through the entire music industry as artists gain more power than they had, though this wouldn't last due to streaming services that would emerge later, but that's another video. With this new paradigm in place, and in the wake of Kanye's rise, we see the emergence of rappers who will become stars apart from the gatekeepers' will. Guys like Wale, Kid Cudi, Lupe Fiasco, and of course, Drake. They all come into the game and make immediate waves without all of the same cosigns and hype that rappers used to need to have to get to a higher spot. And it shows through the nature of their music. They're not really gangsta. They're introspective, vulnerable, emotional. Kid Cudi raps about depression. Lupe Fiasco raps about skateboarding, and Drake raps about rejection and heartbreak. That said, even though things have changed, they haven't changed to the point where Drake really should have been seen as a success that he will become today. Guys like Lupe and Wale still have traditional black masculine swagger that even a Kanye had, and that was seen as necessary to be taken seriously in hip hop. Plus, there's still plenty of street rappers like Meek Mill, A$AP Rocky, etc. getting attention in hip hop with the support of the gatekeepers. So Drake still has a very uphill battle as a biracial kind of gawky looking outsider from Canada.
What are you, deaf? Go!
Drake is best known at the time for being a child actor in Degrassi Junior High, a Canadian teen drama where he played Jimmy Brooks.
Hi, Antonio. It's Jimmy. Yeah, the usual. Medium pepperoni. Thanks.
And while hip-hop has a few breakout artists that have made it out of Toronto, such as Carda Official and Chaos, both were from Caribbean or African immigrant backgrounds, which melded well into existing norms within hip-hop. Drake, on the other hand, was raised by his white Jewish mother. But while Drake didn't have the traditional upbringing of a black rap star in America, it's a misconception that he was born into privilege. Drake actually spent his first 6 years in a rough neighborhood in Toronto, connected to those black immigrant communities. And he didn't move to a nicer part of Toronto until he was 6, and even then, it was only a few minutes from that old neighborhood, and he often lived in apartments. It wasn't until he started acting on Degrassi that he had any real money and comfort in his life.
This is my space, this is where I live. And through here, this is my living room. I like a chilling vibe, that's my favorite thing about this basement. I made this table. Got Barry White, Frank Sinatra, Notorious B.I.G. Everybody around this table has basically inspired me to get into music, particularly Pharrell. He's like one of my idols. So this is where I sit and sometimes write.
Compare this to, say, Kanye West, who was the child of 2 college professors and went to the best schools of Chicago and was connected to the Chicago music scene through his mother's petite bourgeois network. I think it's fair to say that Kanye had a much more privileged upbringing than Drake did. It's just that Kanye was still connected to those typical black street aesthetics in Chicago that Drake very much wasn't in Canada.
Always forever like Luther, but it ain't original because I stole it from the future. Now I'm one of the 3 centuries.
But this is important because it contextualizes a lot of the ways that we often mischaracterize Drake, especially early in his career. And really this mischaracterization to me is at the core of why Drake is the way he is and why people that just kind of dislike Drake don't fully have the best way of explaining the problem with Drake. And people that like Drake don't see it at all, which is Drake's core conflict, his deep childhood wound is not being accepted. Drake was a biracial kid whose father was from America, whereas other biracial kids in his community fathers would have been Caribbean or Somalian. He was double marginalized in that way. And then when he transferred to a white space, he was still the token Negro.
Being biracial was obviously tougher in Forest Hill than it was, you know, in the west end of the city. But I sort of made friends as I could, you know, and I had a tough time, definitely had a tough time.
Throughout most of his childhood and even into his adult life and rap career, he has always been made to feel like an outsider and never felt like he belongs. And his response to this sense of otherness from pretty much everyone in his life was to try to figure out how to earn people's love and respect through sheer will of force or being really fake. Whatever it took to make it to the top so that he can't be denied. And he will do this through any means necessary.
For the fans of hip hop who feel like, man, Drake's not really hip hop, it's like, well, in this world, like, I'm the closest thing you're probably gonna get to hip hop, you know? So just let me infiltrate that pop world and at least, you know, if the song is catchy or it has melody to it and that's not what you like, at least you know in those verses I'm gonna spit my heart out, you know, regardless, no matter what type of song it is.
Early on, Drake is getting minimal love and support. He just doesn't seem like a rapper to American audiences, and thus he is not getting a lot of interest from the industry. He doesn't even have a buzz in Canada.
It feels to a certain extent like Canada came late to the party. Do you feel that way? When it comes to Drake?
No, I would say that it took US acceptance to create Canadian pride.
Even if he did, that probably would have made things worse, if I'm honest. He's pretty good at rapping. He's got a decent singing voice, and he has the ability to create some pretty awesome melodies, but look at him. This is Drake, like when most people first meet him, and I'm just being real. The Beard's doing a lot of work for this nigga. Drake has an uphill battle to climb to be considered anything in the hip hop world, and to his credit, he starts climbing, and he does what he knows best at the time. He starts acting.
Worst behavior?
Yeah,
Motherfuckers never loved us.
Motherfuckers never loved us.
But that's not saying I'm gonna pull a pistol on you and shoot you in your mouth.
Just because you pull a pistol doesn't mean that you hard. But that's
what people mimic in songs and trying to be tough.
Drake goes from having a relatively mild Toronto accent to this weird homunculus. Drake keeps grinding, and eventually he'd make probably his most important and valuable connection, Jazz Prince, who was the son of the aforementioned J. Prince, one of the South's most significant gatekeepers out of Houston, Texas.
Your dad told you to go out and find artists with a buzz.
Yeah.
Who'd you find?
Drake.
That was the first artist you found?
That was
J. Prince is a hip-hop legend, both for his work as an independent mogul, finding acts like the Ghetto Boys, but Prince is also considered one of hip-hop's most legitimate gangsters and like real tough guys. So J. Prince is a big deal, and anybody that rocks with J. Prince is gonna have a lot of credibility just off the strength of him. However, this didn't immediately happen. Even with Jazz Prince's cosign, J. Prince has no interest in Drake initially.
Why didn't you ever put Drake out yourself? Why did y'all go that route? Because you could have.
Yeah, I moved on to boxing. You know, my son, Jazz Prince, you know, the one that discovered Drake, was hanging with Lil Wayne. You know, he and Lil Wayne was cool, and I feel like it was a good opportunity for them to, you know, move forward and do what they wanted to do together.
So Jazz introduces Drake's music to one Lil Wayne, who at the time was on one of the most dominant and prolific runs in hip-hop history, and Wayne saw the vision.
Top down, it's upset, I've been fucking the world, and nigga, I ain't come yet.
Suddenly, through obscene levels of luck, this gawky kid from Canada, faking his accent and trying his best to fit into a rap stardom landscape that was completely foreign to him, was plucked out of obscurity and heading straight for the top.
Load up them choppers like it's December 31st. Roll up the cock and get them niggas warehouse.
To say that this was Drake skipping the line is an understatement. Up until this point, a new rapper needed so many things to go right to even get the attention of a record label, let alone the biggest rapper in the industry. They often would have had to do so much free work, whether it was talent shows, showcases, small clubs, etc., just to get noticed by anyone, let alone someone the status of Lil Wayne. And I'm not saying Drake didn't do some of that stuff, because he did. He doesn't get enough credit for the fact that he did grind as a small artist for a few years before being put on by Wayne. But being put on by Lil Wayne, and having Wayne work hard to utilize his talents and put him on this path and not overshadow him as an artist is a once-in-a-lifetime phenomenon. Wayne was not the first big rapper to create a record label under him. In fact, that's something that a lot of big rappers do because it's the best way to make real money as a rapper. Most rappers are broke. It's just a reality situation. However, historically, this has never turned out all that great for the smaller rappers that sign under big ones. 50 Cent with G-Unit, T.I. with Grand Hustle, Big Boy with Purple Ribbon, Ludacris with Disturbing the Peace, Jay-Z with 95% of Rockefeller. I could go on forever with the amount of times that this specific move has been attempted by a big rapper, and only on a few occasions have any breakout stars come from this. That wasn't the case for Drake. And that's a testament to his hard work, his talent, and appeal as an artist. But you also might have to agree that it was God's plan.
Are you a rapper or are you dapper? I am. I'm trying to be a rapper. Like, this is like what rappers do, wear jackets and sunglasses. I just wanted to try it out. If it's not working for me, I can change it.
And initially, I remembered rooting for Drake. I appreciate that he was different. While the bravado and swag and charisma have always had a place in hip hop, and he didn't quite have that, that same macho element has also been just as harmful as it is not so harmful. While gangster rap was great art in many occasions, it's also regressive and limiting to what great black art could look like. There's also a lot to be said about the fact that the majority of these gangster rappers weren't really gangsters. Some of our favorite and most acclaimed figures were far more complex and dynamic than their personas would tell you. NWA, greatly the originators of the concept of gangster rap, were literally only half as gangster as they presented, with Dr. Dre and Ice Cube being at best knowledgeable of the streets, but not really of it. Tupac is often seen as the personification of gangster rap, but Tupac was much more dynamic and complex than his rap persona, hence his successful foray into acting, which was rooted in his origins as a fine theater arts kid and a poet. As Drake emerges, we have stuff like this in mind, and we're in the era of Kanye, and I, like many others, felt like Drake was just as worthy of hip-hop stardom as anyone if his music was good, which it was.
Getting paid, we'll holler whenever that stop. My team good, we don't really need a mascot. Tell Tune Light one, pass it like a relay. YMCMB, you niggas want.
Why deny him on principle if it was principles that, if we're honest, didn't hold all that much value to begin with? At least that's what I thought then. I don't quite think that now. All that said, Drake made hits. Drake signed to Lil Wayne's Young Money label in 2009. He went on an epic run of hits. Best I Ever Had, Fancy, Forever. Tons of guest appearances with hip hop royalty. The traditional Sprite commercial for, the rap superstar that almost everybody's done at some point. He quickly shot to the top of hip hop's food chain, but not without detractors. Heavy detractors. At the same time as Drake is emerging as a potential megastar, he's also becoming hip-hop's first lol cow. And for anyone that doesn't know what a lol cow is, it's basically a public figure who seemingly can't do anything without people making fun of them, and they just generate constant opportunities to make jokes about them. Despite Drake's rapping abilities and acting abilities for the first half decade or so of his career, it seemed like no matter how good his music, no matter the success in the top 10 hits he had, he couldn't convince a significant portion of hip-hop's fandom that he belonged. And people were mean.
I've said before that I like Drake's honesty. That's one thing I really do appreciate about Drake. I like the fact that he's not afraid to be a bitch on an album.
And I remember all the illest hip-hop fans being like, this is whack, there's too much singing, this is for the girls.
But I can't call this a hip-hop album. This is by no means necessarily a hip-hop album. Take Care is not a hip-hop album.
Why is Lloyd on here? Why is Omarion on here?
He's just a corny dude. In that new Headlines video, he looks extra corny. It's like, Drake, why are you thugging now? Why are you dressed all in black? Why you got on black gloves? Why you got a whole bunch of dudes around you dressed in black? And he has the most non-threatening looking goons I've ever seen in my life. Seriously, they look like a flash mob that's about to run up in H&M and take everything. None of them look like a threat.
Hip-hop bloggers and DJs called him soft and fake. Other rappers constantly took shots at him. He was slapped by Diddy in public.
Now, you know, historically, we've heard about you putting hands on people throughout the years. Like, what made you put hands on Drake?
I did not put hands on Drake.
Oh.
And I do not want any problems with Drake. Drake is, right now, that's all I got.
And peed on by T.I.'s friend, also in public.
It was like, yeah, that shit happened. And I was pissed off at my partner when it happened. The wildest shit I've ever seen before in my life, you know what I'm saying? But I ain't had no malicious intent.
And that's just the stuff we're aware of. And remember, Drake's basic need, especially at the time, is to fit in, is to belong. You hear this preoccupation with rejection in a lot of his early music, and it's clear it was a driving force for him and one of the reasons why he wanted to be so successful. But even as he was becoming successful and getting plenty of cosigns with other major and respected audiences, there was still a clear refusal to treat him with the regard that he had low-key earned through his success by this point.
There haven't been too many people that did it and like were respected, like super lyrically hip hop, like for real hip hop, like the core of hip hop. You know, it was always like they attained commercial success, but when you mention great MCs, you know, you kind of don't hear those names.
Drake didn't want to just make money. Drake didn't want to just be popular with his fan base and with this other fan base he was developing that will come back later. He wanted to be taken seriously as a rapper and as a part of hip hop culture. He wanted to be seen as one of the greats for his era. So despite his many detractors, he kept pushing for that respect, and it did produce some success.
In 5 years, I'd like people to view Take Care at that point as another point of consistency, man. Another over delivery on something that people thought I was going to drop the ball on.
In 2011, Drake would release one of his most beloved albums by his original fans, Take Care. And by original fans, I mean black women. This is also something that will come up later. This album, widely considered a classic, won over almost everyone except for those hip-hop purists. But by then, those hip-hop purists, those gatekeepers, as I said, were greatly declining in influence anyway. This album was saturated in R&B elements, more introspective, more sensitive, more about love and love lost. It also won him his first Grammy Award and was the focal point for his upcoming headlining tour.
We were watching it on the iPad, the pre-telecast, and it kept cutting out. And then it just cut right back on for the moment where they're like, best rap album goes, and they said Take Care, and I almost was like, oh, I didn't, like, it almost didn't even sound like my album. And then we just started going nuts, and we got out literally in the middle of the street, blocked cars, we all hugged.
Drake was showing himself to be an unstoppable force despite the memes and the jokes and the disrespect. But he still wanted that respect and that rap credibility. So for his upcoming Club Paradise tour starting in February of 2012, he rejected the advice of his label and refused to bring on R&B acts to match with what he had put on Take Care. Instead, he signed up 2 up-and-coming rappers to be his opening acts, A$AP Rocky.
I'm trying to earn the right to call myself A$AP Drizzy one day. It's like,
and Kendrick Lamar.
You know, I sat down with Drake in Toronto a while back when I did my first show out there. He called me up, man, we had a few drinks, and, you know, he always said he was you know, appreciative of my music. You know, I've always been a fan of his music. And we've just been chopping it up since, man, and, you know, hit me up one day and say, you know what, handpicked, man, I want you to be on this tour.
In every way that Drake is an anomaly or glitch in hip hop at the time, someone that didn't seem to stand a chance based on their background, Kendrick is the exact opposite.
I'm so far ahead of my time, I got people 5 years from now pressing rewind. I'm hardly impressed with y'all. I hate rappers. Where the true artists at? If it ain't a good picture you draw, don't bring it to the architect.
Kendrick Lamar is from the legendary city of Compton, home of the aforementioned NWA, and came up under the influence of numerous gangster rappers like Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, MC8, and so on. Lamar's upbringing has all of the classic touchstones of the black experience with poverty in America.
From Compton, I could have easily came out and say, I did this, I did that. I done killed a whole bunch of niggas. I done just giving out fact where I'm from. But that ain't me. I'd rather talk about my reality.
Kendrick dealt with money and food insecurity, drugs and crime in the environment, housing instability, untimely death, gang activity, everything that a rapper is expected to need to be taken seriously, to be seen as real in hip-hop culture. Kendrick had that. But unfortunately, much like Drake, he's also coming up in the era of Kanye. So all of those things that would have been amazing benefits to his career 5-6 years earlier didn't really matter as much in the moment. Despite hip-hop culture moving away from the formula that Kendrick fit into, it was still pretty obvious early on that he might be special. And he was, but his success was much more circuitous than it was for Drake. He didn't have the mega cosign early on. His style of rap was less viable in that time, shaped by Kanye. He got a lot of love from a lot of people early on, but he didn't have anyone that was willing to carry him into stardom the way that Lil Wayne did for Drake. He also, if we're honest, just wasn't quite there yet when it came to making commercially viable music. Kendrick was a bit too different at times. That's why I'm back on you, motherfuckers. It also didn't help that Kendrick suffered from the experience that he grew up in. Kendrick reportedly dealt with depression and anxiety even as a kid, which isn't surprising considering that environment. As a former social worker, I can tell you that a whole lot of black children suffer from mental illness and instability from their environment, and it never gets addressed as they get older. You can tell in Kendrick's music that there is a brooding, foreboding sense of dread and pessimism, and this is something that came through in his later works like Damn, But I'm Getting Ahead of Myself. Kendrick was signed and had just released Section 80, which was successful but not enough to propel him into superstardom, but it was enough to get him recognized as an up-and-comer, landing him in a BET Cypher in 2011.
And I probably can touch the sun with my bare hands. What are your plans? To win the Grammy? Sweet taste of victory like Oprah's. Don't judge me, that's just some irony, trust me.
He was also busy working on his follow-up album when he got that call from Drake to go on tour as his opener, and there's not much known about this time, but I can't help but theorize that the seeds of this beef probably started here. Two running themes emerged from Kendrick around this point in his music and interviews, which is his purest view of hip-hop as a culture, as well as an intense desire to be recognized as, if not one of the greats, then the greatest of his generation.
I came into this business wanting to be the best artist, the best rapper, so I went and studied the greats, the usual suspects, Tupac, Jay-Z, Nas, of course.
Kendrick is what one might call a hip-hop purist. You can see elements of that specific philosophy in so much of his art and persona. That label, hip-hop purist, doesn't have a perfect definition, but to me, the best way to explain it is to look at the difference between, the way people might operate in a religion. You'll have the practitioners, people that associate with a particular faith or go to church or temple or whatever regularly. But then there's the disciples of that belief system that dedicate a lot of their lives and the way they live to be within the framework of that belief system. To make it less dramatic, maybe, there's people who like Star Wars and watch some of the Disney shows, and then there's people who collect all the materials and even read the Star Wars books before Disney even bought Star Wars. Yes, this does mean that most hip-hop purists are very much nerds, and yes, they do have the capacity to be very, very annoying. And I say that as someone who's kind of a nerdy hip-hop purist. It is what it is. If you've ever engaged with a hip-hop purist, and especially if you've asked them their opinions on Drake, you'll get some very specific talking points, mostly around the damage that is being done to hip-hop by being overly commercialized. Purists believe that hip-hop is at its best and healthiest when it's more focused on its origins as a radical art form born out of black and brown and even a little bit of white culture from the Northeast in America in the 70s and 80s versus this corporate force that has given us a lot of great music and some really interesting moments and artists, but is also mostly about getting a few rich people richer and a even smaller amount of poor people kinda rich at the cost of watering down everything that hip hop was and could have been at its earliest phases. Purists believe that rappers should write their own rhymes, that the influence of white fans and corporations should be limited on what hip hop actually is in the media. Rappers should control major movements of the culture, aka the gatekeepers, and these are things that most purists believe in that I'm confident Kendrick believes in. And all of this may seem ridiculous to outsiders, but it makes sense if you are within hip hop. If you understand that hip hop isn't just an art movement or a genre of music, for a lot of rappers, for a lot of hip hop's biggest fans, it was a way of life. The music of hip hop has that disco party background, but the energy and aesthetics of hip hop owe as much to the Black Panthers as they do to the Sugar Hill Gang. One doesn't have to listen to much Public Enemy or KRS-One to hear the same voices and speaking cadences of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey. But these are the types of things that have been pushed aside more and more and more as hip hop became a bigger commercial enterprise. And this change didn't start with Drake, but by the time Drake becomes rap's biggest star in the early 2010s, many purists have begun to notice that the balance of hip hop is off, and Drake to many represents that imbalance. And so I can't help but think that upon meeting Drake way back in 2012 and having to open up for him, that it's possible that Kendrick was kind of disgusted with everything about Drake. I'll explain why later, but there's a lot of reasons Drake was hated that aren't just about him being an outsider.
In San Diego, thank you for one of the greatest nights of our lives, and until the next time we see you, take care!
By the early 2010s, the previous generation of hip-hop stars had begun to slow down. Kanye was doing a lot of his experimentation and was also showing signs.
I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
Jay-Z, Lil Wayne, and 50 Cent were fading into the background. It was time to crown a new king for hip-hop, and Drake was the obvious choice, just a choice it felt like no one really wanted to make. At this time, Drake was clearly outdoing everyone in the class that came in with him. Meek Mill, Wale, J. Cole, etc. None of them really were meeting the level of quality in their music or the level of success and popularity. He had the cosign of Wayne, the most recent top rapper in the game, and he had just won a Grammy. But even saying all that, 2 albums in, it was hard to say that Drake really had done anything to be considered the king of hip hop, because that meant doing something that was considered special or impactful that kind of shifted the paradigm of hip hop or changed the game. When you think about Tupac's reign at the top, Biggie's reign at the top, Jay-Z who came after them, Kanye who came after Jay-Z, they all have significant moments within their music, albums that they released that everyone said pretty much in unison, okay, this is what hip hop is going forward, and this is the person that will lead us to that next destination. And Drake just didn't do that. He has some great, and to Drake's credit, and I want y'all to hear me say this, to Drake's credit, he did probably the most like hip hop thing he's done in his entire career. He went right to the booth. Drake began working on his third and many consider his best album, Nothing Was the Same, not long after Good Kid, Mad City dropped, and set it to release at around the same time the following year. However, Kendrick inadvertently, or maybe in retrospect, purposefully stepped on Drake's toes during the build-up to this album's release. Rapper Big Sean, one of the respected but second-tier rappers of that era, leaked a song named Control.
When you put this record together, did you know that what you were holding on to? Because it didn't get clear for the album?
Nah, man, because of sample stuff. But I feel like that song was so important to the culture.
Let me tell you what was great about that Control record. It wasn't like everybody said, you got to hear this, or something's coming, or you know what I'm saying? Like, it just seemed like all of a sudden, it just fucked the whole game up.
He wasn't trying to start any beef. He just wanted to push the essence of hip hop back to the forefront, which seemed like it was kind of falling by the wayside.
And I just feel like, hey man, this is pushing the culture forward. I knew what it was going to do. This is the most exciting rap song that's dropped in years.
In that song, Kendrick had a verse that calls out many rappers by name that was significant in his generation, including Drake, and essentially challenged them to fight him for the top spot. It was a beautiful thing in the eyes of hip hop purists because it spoke to the idea of competition creating great art. The desire to want to do better than those you're in community with is what leads to breakthroughs like Good Kid, Mad City. In response, many of the rappers he named or even alluded to made similar songs of just pure bars and heat.
You know, as soon as he saw me, he said, yo, thank you so much for just, for understanding and not taking the verse the wrong way.
I like that.
And I was like, Kendrick, you don't know I'm different, bruh. I was like, I'm different. Like, I understand. Like, I listen to rap.
Right.
I understand.
It's the sport of hip hop.
It's the sport. It's the sport of hip hop. And I looked at it like, man, he shouted out his peers.
B.O.B., Big Crit, J. Cole, all dedicated some energy to it. Even super lyrical rappers not mentioned like a Papoose or Joel Ortiz or Lupe Fiasco responded. But that wasn't Drake's response. Drake didn't take this well, and it wasn't a good look.
You wouldn't do it for sport ever?
Like just to call someone out?
No, like after Kendrick's thing, you wouldn't. I noticed you didn't really get into that too much. So
I just I don't know. It just wasn't real to me. It's like I saw him after that, and it was just like, love. So it's like, was that real or was that just like for the people? You know what I mean?
I think it's a sparring kind of sport.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, you know, then let it be real then, you know, I mean, because those were harsh words, right? So it's like, you can't just say that and then see me and be like, yeah, man, what's up? Pretending like nothing ever happened. Like, that's not real. To me, that's not like.
While those rappers responded with hip hop, you know, adjacent energy, or just ignored it and focused on their own stuff, Drake mostly just complained. His response was less Wu-Tang Clan and more Mean Girls.
I personally enjoy making like great music and bodies of work over like being the talk of Twitter for like 5 days, you know.
But you seem just now a little irritated by it. No?
Really?
Yeah, just by even saying that those were harsh words, it seemed like maybe it irritated you for a second. Is that wrong?
No, it's just like, I mean...
And I get it, as Drake was literally on a press tour for his own album release, and it was the most ambitious personal project he had done pretty much in his entire career. It must have been annoying that this one verse by this artist who was clearly better than him was the talk of hip hop and not what he was trying to do with his new album. But he also could have just responded on some hip hop shit, released a mixtape or just a verse to like promote the fact that his album was coming out and threw it on the album last minute. I don't know. He could have twisted it in a lot of different ways. Instead, he just pouted.
Coming from that situation, it was unexpected. You know, I wouldn't like. It's sort of like in working your way up and sort of building relationships. I wouldn't expect you to like throw all the relationships out the door for the sake of, like I said, being like the talk of the internet for 10 days. And then, you know, it's like now this, like everyone's going to forget about it.
He didn't just pout. He took Kendrick out of context. He took out of context Kendrick's intent in a way that, like, coming from Drake, it was like,
I almost wish he had come in there on that shit, because I kind of lost like a little respect for the sentiment of the verse. If it's really fuck everybody, then it needs to be fuck everybody. It just can't be halfway for the sake of the people. But you know what I'm saying? Like, for real, that's just how I feel.
Dude, who are you right now? What is this? What is this tough guy act you're giving us? And this furthered the belief that Drake was not really of hip hop culture, that he was an outsider that just happened to know how to rap. And for me personally, this was the last straw in terms of my perception for him and my willingness to give him grace. Even though I love Nothing Was the Same and I think it's a great album, it just was all bad from here. The persona that he had been portraying could not be reconciled any further from my perspective. And it would only get worse from here. That year at the Grammys, it was Drake versus Kendrick for Rap Album of the Year. And they both lost to Macklemore because the Grammys are some bullshit, but that's a whole other conversation. But Macklemore sent Kendrick a message apologizing about the injustice, saying that he definitely had the best rap album.
Kendrick is a friend of mine. He's somebody that I love his music. And in my opinion, had the best rap album of the year. And knowing how the Grammys usually go, I knew that there would be a great chance that we would win that award and, in essence, rob Kendrick. So that's what happened tonight.
And Drake didn't like this either, saying that he should get an apology, not just Kendrick. And just at this point, Kendrick had enough slick talk, and he sent back some not so subtle shots toward Drake in the BET Cypher in 2013.
Yeah, and nothing been the same since they dropped Control and tucked the sense of the rapper back in his pajama clothes. Ha ha, jokes on you, high five. I'm bulletproof.
These bars included a glaring pain point between Kendrick and Drake, that Kendrick belongs here and Drake does not, and that it was obvious to everyone at this point how things stood. Many thought and hoped that Drake would respond directly, but he resorted to his own subliminals for the next few years as their beef devolved into a Cold War of sorts. Subliminals here and there from either rapper, but nothing ever overtly direct. And it's at this point that I think everyone will admit that Drake changed. He was mostly quiet for 2 whole years after this album, which is odd for him and would be unheard of now. He did some guest work with Young Money and other artists, but nothing for himself until randomly dropping If You're Reading This It's Too Late. While I don't like this record, I think this is the first time we meet the real Drake. It's the first time he really claims his hometown of Toronto. I bet you there's people that didn't even know Drake was from Toronto until they heard this album. It's the first time he doesn't feel like he's complaining or begging for approval or inclusion with the culture. Instead, he's cocky and smarmy, taking on a spirit that indicates that he doesn't need to ask for the top spot anymore. It's already his. I still don't personally like the music, but I did find myself liking Drake a little bit when this newer, more honest version of Drake showed up. And people began to talk about him differently from this point on in a way that at the moment I was happy about, but in retrospect, it really was too late. Or at least that's what we should have been thinking, but because we had just gotten this amazing piece of work from Kendrick, nobody cared. In fact, right after If You're Reading This Is Too Late dropped, Kendrick released To Pimp a Butterfly, considered the greatest rap album of the generation, if not, again, one of the greatest of all time. It was critically acclaimed, universally praised, and killed any notion of whether or not any other rapper should be considered Kendrick's peer in the hip-hop world, including Drake. There are 100 videos talking about how great this album is, so I won't rehash it, but just understand, in the modern era, no one talked about hip-hop like they were for this album.
Pac was a prophet to me, and everything he's talking about is actually going on today. You know what I'm saying? That right there just sparked the idea immediately for what I was talking about in my record.
So when you met Pac in Cuba, is this the story y'all came up with?
It's the difference in these two albums where you start to see the beginnings of a huge divergence between Kendrick and Drake. I kind of look at this as the moment where Drake gave up on his original dreams and goals for being a rapper. It doesn't come across as much now, but for those who were there at the beginning and for those who understand what was happening then, you recognize that Drake originally was, ironically, not the type of rapper that would have liked Drake. Drake liked that hardcore hip-hop nerd shit and or the musical marvels that were pushing the boundaries of what rap music could sound like. Drake liked Kanye and Pharrell along with Joe Budden. This may surprise some of you, but Drake was a lyrical miracle rapper like a lot of white rappers that get into hip-hop when he first came out.
Tried and it take them too long to realize they mimicking. Said that people had trouble naming their favorite rapper. Most of them getting older, none of them in the trap. And in reality, they working, but none of them on the map. They want to have these videos like T.I.P. and B.I.G. and female singers want to be Ciara, Whore, and D.R.E. or somebody that they could call their own for that.
But Drake knew that that wasn't a real lane for him, so he developed into his own thing. But what he wanted was for that unique thing that was Drake to be accepted and respected by those who inspired him. And many of those who inspired him rejected him. And then here comes Kendrick, who is everything Drake isn't, making the type of music that Drake can't, taking the spot that Drake wants. Suddenly, Kendrick Lamar was getting Vanity Fair and GQ covers and being treated as a visionary artist, not just a rapper. Drake was the cool celebrity pop star guy you wanted to party with, and you wanted to know who he was dating and what he was wearing, and oh man, let's have him host Saturday Night Live. And Kendrick was a luminary, a maven to be taken seriously, a person whose words were meant to be enshrined in a museum, and a lot of stuff that's kind of cringe still, but I could imagine that still rubbed Drake the wrong way.
I went over to the studio and he played me a lot of the album, and I'm just like, wow, this is incredible.
Man, dude, so you still impressed. You're like, man, like this is it. And I'm pretty sure that means something to someone.
Yeah, not only am I impressed, it's like making me want to go back and get on my grizzle. You know what I mean? I got to get back in the studio myself.
Kendrick was getting effortlessly what Drake had worked so hard to try to attain. Drake had done everything right, hadn't he? He had said the right things, connected with the right people. He didn't start beefs with the wrong people. He made good music, and he even finally revealed his true self to the culture, and the culture responded positively. But to the culture, to the hip hop heads, and to the greater music and art world, it wasn't a question of where he stood when it came in comparison to Kendrick. Kendrick was the clear king of hip hop music, and Drake was a really awesome rapper and pop star. But again, God's plan presented him with an opportunity to completely shift the trajectory of his career, and then things really started to get interesting. Kendrick makes a comment in his first single, King Kuta, from To Pimp a Butterfly. Many wondered who this line was aimed at, and when Meek Mill, another second-tier rapper from that generation, begins to make open accusations of Drake using a ghostwriter, it's understood who that line was aimed at. This should have been seen as a very serious accusation. In the hip-hop world, especially the world controlled by the gatekeepers and the purists, the very idea of another rapper writing your songs is blasphemous. Maybe helping with a hook or a couple of bars, assisting and being collaborative, but it seemed like people were giving Drake entire verses and songs, the same way you would a pop star or an R&B artist. Understand, most rappers don't sing, right? Like, one of the ways that hip hop became legitimate in the eyes of the greater music world was based on the fact that these rappers were speaking their true, authentic selves on record. That they weren't buying songs from songwriters, they were putting their true experiences down on paper. Most of you all watching will probably be too young to understand that in the 70s and 80s, hip hop was greatly looked down upon, not just by like white conservative audiences, but by black artists and singers and musicians as well. It was looked at with a very negative light because they weren't playing their own music and they weren't, they were pulling pieces of music from all these other places to make their own stuff. It was seen as lowbrow entertainment. And it was on the strength of the fact that these people were writers and artists making poetry that hip hop was able to kind of gain legitimacy. And so the principle of writing your own music was super important to anyone in hip hop essentially before Drake. And it wasn't that people didn't have ghostwriters. It wasn't that it was always 100% honest with everybody writing every lyric. But at a minimum, it wasn't something that was out in the open as it seems to be now because of a guy like Drake. An aspiring rapper named Quentin Miller was shown to have written several songs for Drake. Songs Quentin Miller states he wasn't even fully paid for, and not just a hook or a few elements, entire verses and more.
You get in the studio with Drake and you end up basically co-writing what became Used To, 10 Bands, Legend, and Six Man.
Yeah. I also wrote on Bless. Everybody was just so welcoming. It just felt so cool. I felt like I was, a part of the shit. Like Drake literally was looking me in my face like, yo, man, this album wouldn't be possible if it weren't for you. Like, you really helped. You have no idea, da-da-da. Like, you saying this to a dude that was working in the bakery, you know what I'm saying? Like,
and for Drake, who was already looked at as an outsider, this seemed like it was going to be the end of his career, except it wasn't. Drake released Charged Up, attacking Meek Mill for his accusations. This is probably the first diss track anyone had ever heard from Drake. Drake was not actually foreign to rap beef, as he had been targeted by numerous rappers before, including Tyga, Common, and Pusha T in years prior, but those are much more low profile. Considering the accusations from Meek and the image that Meek carried as a burgeoning top-tier star himself, and a former battle rapper who had legitimate street cred, this was bigger, and it seemed like it wouldn't be enough. Charged Up was cool, but what really changed things was what Drake did next.
I do this shit for real.
Only a few days later, Drake released Back to Back before Meek Mill could even make his first response.
Yeah, I learned the game from William West, so you can never check it. Back to back for the niggas that didn't get the message.
And while Back to Back isn't necessarily a scathing diss track, it was a banger that embarrassed Meek on a nationwide scale.
When I look back, I might be mad that I gave this attention. Yeah, but it's weighing heavy on my conscience.
It was a top 10 hit for weeks, if not months, and there were countless videos of people playing the song at parties. Remember that for later.
You gon' make me go out of my fucking way. I waited 4 days, nigga, where y'all at? I drove here to Ray Play.
So Drake had Meek on the ropes, but many hip hop purists still assumed that Meek would have a strong response, but he didn't. So what's surprising then, considering the way Meek Mill acts now, this is so surprising now, but at the time it was considered one of the worst diss tracks of all time, and I don't think Meek has ever recovered from this moment.
Man, I know that you gotta be in love for it. This ain't what she meant when she told you to open up more. Yeah, straight the fingers, straight the fingers. Yeah, you get body by singing, nigga.
This was not how this was supposed to go. Drake didn't beat or defend the ghostwriting allegations. He basically admitted them, but all that mattered was the crowd screaming back to back at Drake's concerts. And suddenly Drake had credibility that he had never had before. And there were no consequences for him being exposed to be one of the absolute worst things you could be in the eyes of hip hop: a biter, a copycat, a faker. As long as he made hits, nobody would ever touch him, and it showed. The gatekeepers had lost any powers years ago, and although there was still a strong culture of hip-hop purists who looked down upon Drake, there was a bigger, stronger culture of more casual pop rap fans that Drake himself had helped grow and bring into hip-hop that had no real interest in hip-hop's origins or standards. And yes, I'm mostly talking about white people. Meanwhile, Kendrick was having a different experience. For Kendrick, stardom was never his goal. His goal was to change the world, possibly even to save it. That's what To Pimp a Butterfly was kind of about. Not completely, but that was in its spirit. And Kendrick, in his hubris and faith and ambition, thought that if he made that perfect album, if he made the perfect song, that maybe he could destroy the world that he came from, that he can make it so there are no more good kids that have to grow up in a mad city. And if you go back and you analyze To Pimp a Butterfly from a sociological standpoint, you see that Kendrick really wasn't doing a good job of that. Just want to keep it real. Kendrick took a very hyper-individualistic stance on Black people's issues as a whole. He comes off and sometimes continues to come off paternalistic toward Black women. He presents this not so accurate belief that maybe all that Black people need is the right inspiration and we be able to overcome our obstacles. But it's not that simple. It takes so much more, way more than any one work of art, no matter how great. And it seems like when he was faced with this failure and that realization, that it kind of broke him. Kendrick talked himself about having panic attacks on tour and before shows. He talked about going out on the road and going to concerts and then coming home to funerals for his friends that were still being killed in the street. He had survivor's guilt, guilt over his own shortcomings and infidelity as a partner and husband, and just disenchantment with the way fame was affecting him. In 2017, 2 years after To Pimp a Butterfly, Kendrick put all of his frustration, guilt, anger, and bitterness over his fame into Damn. While To Pimp a Butterfly is hopeful to the point of being preachy even, Damn is ugly, pessimistic, and nihilistic. It genuinely expresses that there is absolutely no hope for a better world for Black people because we are damned by God. And while I love that record personally, many who were inspired by T-Pab's hopefulness were put off by Damn's mean-spirited derision. But possibly to his frustration, Damn is ironically much more of a commercial success than anything he's done up until this point. It sells more records than T-Pab and is looked at by a lot of casual rap fans as his actual best album. He even won a Pulitzer Prize, the first rapper to ever do that for an album where all he seemingly did was lash out at the world. I can't help but think that this just made things worse for Kendrick's state of mind and mental health, which he would later confirm. And further lost in this artistic conflict he had was any semblance of a beef with Drake. And suddenly, not long after Damn, Kendrick's basically gone. He still pops up for performances and tours and a few guest appearances, but new music, interviews, major projects, they're nowhere to be seen for half a decade. And then Drake wins Artist of the Decade.
Thank you very, 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 very much.
Kendrick was looked at as the rap artist of the generation, the most transformative rapper since Tupac, who was elevating the genre in ways that hadn't been imagined. And then he was gone 2 years into that reign as the king and the rightful face of hip hop. He abdicated his throne and Drake usurped it. In Kendrick's absence, there was a vacuum of power. And whenever there's a vacuum of power, it's often the most daring and least scrupulous that win the scramble to take the throne.
I think that there's something to be said for the fact that everybody wants to be the guy with the juice. Everybody wants to be the best. And because we're doing a form of music where it's complete self-expression, a lot of it has to do with talking about yourself. I think that's where a lot of the confrontation stems from in our genre because, you know, in the times where I'll make a record and then go away, you know, a lot of people say a lot of things, try and state their claim, or, you know, when you're not on an album cycle, there's gonna be someone else that wants that spot.
So up to this point, I've tried to mostly engage with Drake versus Kendrick as it pertains to art and hip hop, and maybe address why more hardcore rap critics took issue with Drake and his rise to stardom. During the first phases of Drake's career, where he was mostly hated by the core of hip hop fans, I have to admit that a lot of that hate was bad. But going forward, we have to kind of start recognizing that some of that hate was not just warranted, it didn't go far enough. In the second half of Drake's career, from the Meek Mill beef up until now, he's been at the height of his powers, but ironically has been much less inspiring as an artist and much more overtly problematic in his behavior, while putting much less effort into seeking out and desiring the respect of his peers in hip hop culture. And with the power that he's gained from this uniquely white fan base, he's been far more dominant and powerful and problematic. This newfound power, along with the talent that Drake still has, and maybe letting go of the burden Drake placed upon himself to be accepted and respected by everyone, resulted in the album Views, one of his most successful albums that produced some of his greatest hits, but also began a controversial pattern that had probably been in place for a while. It's just that the old Drake put in more effort to hide what he was doing. It was his first foray into overt wave hopping. Early on, Drake was the up-and-coming artist, constantly appearing on more established rappers' songs for legitimacy, and now he was reversing that role, but in a weird, kind of exploitative way. Drake has, whether cynically or just through a love of music, developed a knack for recognizing the next big thing. He finds soon-to-be breakout artists and requests to collab with them. And this is often referred to as the Drake stimulus package because this collaboration is often very beneficial for this up-and-coming artist. And for Drake, he gets the opportunity to associate himself with a new buzzworthy artist and possibly cannibalize a new audience that maybe he hadn't been able to touch up until that point. It should be a win-win, but on more than a few occasions, these smaller artists have been exploited by this process. They end up kind of suckered into giving Drake some of their best music or the biggest parts of their small waves, and then after Drake leaves, it's not a lot left for them to do. This was the conflict between Drake and The Weeknd, who reports that most of the songs off of Take Care, the album that many consider their favorite from Drake, were originally his songs that Drake basically coerced or forced him into giving up.
Do you think also the fact that things didn't work out with The Weeknd, he ended up doing his own thing, like you said, you would embrace almost building another star, though. You're not really going out of your way trying to make it happen, but if it did happen, you'd be able to deal with it and embrace it, and then that didn't work out. Do you think that kind of overlaps a little bit of this kind of organic thing you're building with OVO?
With Abel, we had our run. We had our moments on Take Care, and my features on his projects, and he just really came to me at one point, came to all of us and was like, look, I don't want to sign under another artist because I feel like I could be just as big or bigger, and I want to start my own thing.
But even if it's not this kind of nebulous Drake stimulus package thing, there's also been times where Drake outright steals shit from other artists in terms of style and aesthetics. The most blatant example of this is the song I Love to Cha-Cha by artist Drum, which was then remixed by Drake and then released as its own thing for Hotline Bling, one of Drake's biggest hits, and if I'm gonna be honest, probably my favorite Drake song of all time.
Called Hotline Bling. I still can't believe Drake put that out in the middle of a beat. That's not crazy. It's fucking nuts. Ends up being arguably the biggest record of his entire career outside of maybe God's Plan. Maybe. That's a direct bite of Cha-Cha.
Yeah, it was. It was just a little shocking because it came out as like the Cha-Cha remix. You know what I'm saying?
As is, not really Hotline Bling. At the time.
Right.
At the time, it was the Cha-Cha remix.
It fucked with me for a long time.
Recently, there's been a lot of accusations that Drake is copying the look of Smino and of Tizo Touchdown, who we just recently did some music with. And ironically, Views is where people started to criticize Drake the most for this, but Views is actually probably relatively genuine because, as I mentioned, Drake spent his early years in a Caribbean immigrant working class community, so he would have actually been relatively native to those sounds growing up. But it kind of goes to show that there was a small but maybe loud or active coalition kind of looking at Drake sideways for the way he was clearly beginning to manipulate the industry as an artist and not just being an artist.
He did a song with Block Boy JD and all that. Like, listen.
But what does that have to do with music?
I'm trying to tell you, his attachment, he kept attaching himself to everything of the culture.
That's fly.
But never had to ever be responsible.
As I said earlier, at this point, Drake stops being a rap artist and starts being a content creator. He starts just putting out as much stuff as possible of varying levels of quality, popping up everywhere so that it was never a chance to miss him. Now, the good thing is, most of the time when he popped up, you liked what he had to offer you, but it does feel like you were getting a product as opposed to something unique and useful from him as an artist. And from Views until now, we are in Drake's most honest era, which is not necessarily a good thing because we kind of start to peel back the layers for those of us who have been critical of him in the first place. We find out that Drake has a bad habit of sleeping with or on some level courting other men's wives, girlfriends, and exes as a way to hurt them for seemingly no reason at all other than this seems to be a thing he's into. Most famously, the example of Drake sleeping with Lil Wayne's girlfriend well before Drake had really moved into mega stardom, at a point where this really would have been a bad decision. It would have been a situation where he could have risked cutting off his most significant cosign and advocate, but you know, hey.
Will you rap about that? Do you think it'll end up on a song maybe you two might,
No. She still be texting me and stuff, They stop texting me too. For real. Cause it still hurt.
Does it really?
No.
And at the same time, he was talking about we gotta hold Wayne down. But like, it was only 8 months. He couldn't hold out 8 months without sleeping with this dude's girl. It's weird.
Are you Lil Wayne's protege?
I am.
Would that be fair to say?
Yes, sir.
And did you see him recently in prison?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell me about that visit?
It was definitely a change for me to see a man who I've always viewed as my hero and always viewed as very powerful in somewhat of a vulnerable position.
The Drake of the last 7 or 8 years is kind of the real Drake. And in some ways that's preferable, but in other ways, as you learn the types of things Drake has been doing when he had more shame, you realize, ironically, Drake's critics were actually too nice to him during the first half of his career. I feel like if people could see now what modern Drake is doing and what he will become versus what young Drake was doing behind the scenes, they would have never let him in to begin with. For example, do you know who really should be upset with modern Drake? Black women. As I pointed out earlier, Drake built his career off the backs, or should I say the ears, of black women. His initial acting job was to act like a sensitive rapper, act like a ladies' man.
And that is why you never try and beat the master at his own game. Well, I thought you were the sensitive artiste/clothing designer now. When will you learn? I'm everything.
But a ladies' man in a way that hadn't existed in hip hop up until this point. Rappers had made songs for the ladies for years, but Drake was able to take it to another level. Greatly because of the gangsta thug elements that other rappers like needed to survive and thrive in hip hop at the time, any type of love song from most rappers still somehow managed to be overtly misogynistic a lot of times. But Drake had a way of centering black women in his music that most rappers either weren't capable of doing or were too prideful to do because it would make them look soft, which of course is how Drake was often regarded early in his career. A lot of Drake's initial suffering in the eyes of hip hop was this unfair depiction of him as being soft because he wasn't this overt misogynist. But at the same time, women are an incredibly important and valuable audience that you need in hip hop. If you can't get women to dance to your music, if you are too busy scaring the hoes, then you can guarantee that your shows will be musty sausage fests that will make less money.
This is my favorite part of the show because it's time. It's time to scare the hoe.
Meanwhile, Drake's tours, the aforementioned tour for Take Care, was one of the most lucrative tours of the early 2010s. But over time, Drake would leave this core black female audience behind. And by the late 2010s, as Drake developed this online army of meme lords that kind of like are the worst fans in the world, not everybody's fans are bad. Even my fans can be bad. Drake's fans are uniquely bad. As that particular fan base grew for Drake, he became like every other rapper when it came to black women. While the usual misogyny in hip hop was on this like Big Willie, Don Pimps thing that wasn't really realistic, it was all mythology, it was all fantasy, Drake's misogyny was pretty tangible and like normal in the type of misogyny that women would more regularly go through. Typical misogyny in hip hop is like, we're gonna pour champagne on a stripper, and Drake's misogyny is, I'm gonna release like revenge porn of my ex-girlfriend. Drake often talked about heartbreak in his lyrics, but over time, it's like he went from being lovelorn to being annoyed in regard to his relationships. By the 2020s, he's taken overt shots at ex-girlfriends such as Rihanna and Serena Williams, eventually graduating to taking shots at women for apparently no reason, like Megan Thee Stallion and even Taylor Swift. In 2023, he took a shot at, I don't remember the young lady's name, I'm just gonna put it right here. And this is in between the many weird lines and bars about the much younger women he's dating not being fun or sophisticated. It's just a lot of weird shit. The black women who once championed and insulated Drake from the purest hip-hop fans were now being thrown to the wayside for obnoxious white superfans who would hang on Drake's every word and live vicariously through him. Drake's fans are the types of fan that want to attach themselves to whomever is on top. They're like the type of people that are Cowboys fans, but they live in like Boston. They relish the fact that Drake has no shame or accountability to hip-hop culture or women or anyone. Drake's fans are basically the Trump voters of hip hop. And like, if you go to Drake's Reddit page, that's not that wild of a statement. And this isn't explicitly just the whiteness of his fans, although that is a big part of it. Black people are only 13% of the population. It's just mathematically impossible to be a rap megastar and not have a huge white following. However, there has always been an unspoken understanding between rap stars and their white fans, that the music is for them, but not for them. White fans were more than welcome to come to shows and spend money and maybe even say the word at home when no one is around. We know y'all do it. It's, you know, just don't get froggy about that shit. But they were never to be fully catered to or centered in the conversation of what hip hop is and should be. And for lack of a better way of putting it, good white fans mostly understood this. Even stars like Jay-Z and Lil Wayne, who shamelessly chased commercial success, still understood this dynamic. This is what happened with Kendrick on stage with the random white girl that said the N-word. She had basically not kept up her end of the deal. But to be clear, this isn't some altruistic, super pro-black shit. This is just the nature of the business. Rappers, companies, etc. recognize that the major draw of hip-hop to its white audience was its ability to pull them in to what these white people imagined was the black experience. It was escapism, similar to why people like superheroes or athletes or karate stars. Like the same way that little white boys will come out of a martial arts movie doing fake karate kicks on their little siblings, 15 years later, those same boys will be men imitating Jay-Z or Lil Wayne when they go to the club or on spring break or something. Historically, the swagger of black men has been one of our biggest American exports, going all the way back to Chuck Berry and rock and roll. Check out my black men's fetishization video for more on that. But understand that all the features about black manhood that get us shot by police, racially profiled, kicked out of schools, etc., all that negative stuff that we experience, we on occasion through hip hop flip it into something useful by selling our own dysfunction back to the people that cause it. And in doing that, we find ways to escape or maybe even elevate ourselves. This isn't exactly a good thing, but it's something that has benefited black folks on multiple levels. And there's been an understanding that we will export this blackness for the financial gain and then also protect it so that we remain in control of it, i.e. the gatekeeper. That was their implicit job, because if we don't control it, then we don't get to dictate the terms of this swagger. And we risk losing the direct benefits while still being the main people who suffer under it. And today we have Jack Harlow and Tom McDonald and countless others. Today the slang and lingo and dances that we innately just create just through the nature of our reality and the innate talent of our people, that stuff is so proliferated through media apart from us that we get no credit for it and thus no benefit. And Drake isn't the core reason why this happened, but he's emblematic of that change because he perfected the process of doing it during this time period while Kendrick was gone. Hip hop had changed so much, not just in the preceding years where Kendrick went quiet, but since that era with the emergence of Kanye. The culture of the internet and influence in social media was much more prominent than the actual music when it came to hip hop. It had become more about stan culture and who your fave was than whether or not they were actually giving you good music. And the tastemakers and thought leaders had drastically changed to the point where we still had a few good ones like your Sean C or Anthony Fantano, the whole Hip Hop DX podcast, etc. But they were also sharing space with some more not so great gatekeepers like your Academics or your Adam 22 or the plethora of hip hop podcasts that half the time just sound like old weird dudes yelling and not really talking about good music.
I'ma hold this thing. Get the fuck out of here. You mad? Because I'ma make money with Birdman and you ain't making money because you fucking flopped. You flop. You fucking neighborhood rapper.
Academics is a really interesting case study in how this new era of social media clout influence hip hop journalism works, because Academics was a Drake fanboy that eventually weaseled his way into a direct relationship with Drake, becoming almost a propaganda wing of Drake's, whole community, carrying his water and spinning his negative press positive.
What top 5 you smoking on, Kendrick? Cause my top 5 is Drake, 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 Drake.
If we broke it off, then you know it wasn't.
There's videos of Drake clearly shitting on Academics and not wanting to be bothered with them.
Mom's birthday. Mom turned 70 today. Just feeling a vibe. Yo, Academics dip from my life, man. Real talk, man. I'm really like that, bro. I need a dip from my life, man. Real talk.
And I know some people be like, hey, how could you be a fan of someone who would check you on a record? But to me, I thought it was almost a hats off or an acknowledgement to where I have actually came to.
Why are you on Drake's cock?
Okay, first of all, Drake didn't even call Joe.
Why are you on Drake's cock? Never mind him calling you fuck name. Why are you on his cock?
Discussing the hottest rapper in the game. And I'm sorry.
Who's not fucking with you, by the way?
But Drake figured out that in this era that was really shaped a lot by his behavior, clout was more important than any of the actual music. As long as you had fans and stans willing to carry your water and say whatever you said was good, regardless of if it was, as long as real critics weren't really taken seriously, the only thing that was important is making sure your narrative was strong and prolific. The purists and gatekeepers and pretty much anyone else that wasn't enjoying the direction that hip hop was going in didn't have much they could do about it. They had to kind of sit there and quietly take it. No matter what they said, it would fall on deaf ears or be drowned out by the loud, clout-driven audiences that Drake could still pull.
What's going on in hip hop right now is embarrassing, dude. And the thing is, it's nothing as a whole wrong with hip hop. Hip hop just needs some fucking balance. Hip hop don't need to be all positive. It don't need to be all negative, but we need to control the images.
Why was he allowed to flout the standards of hip hop that had been important for so long? Why can he bite other people's style and not write his own songs? Why is none of the snake behavior that we know he's been doing for years still not affecting him? Someone should do something about this. Well, in 2019, 4 years after the Meek Mill beef and 2 years since anyone's really heard from Kendrick, re-enter one Pusha T. Much like Kendrick and other rappers from that earlier era who were more respected, Pusha is from a rough background, a former drug dealer, and a traditional gangster rapper. He, like many a traditionalist in hip-hop, has never liked Drake or what he stood for, but unlike other rappers, he never hid it either. He didn't care if it cost him clout or success or access. He refused to be quiet about it and has let this be known on so many occasions, to the point where it was understood that if Pusha T was going to be a place, he needed to leave if Drake was going to come to that place.
With you and Drake, it's been an ongoing thing, but but I do think
one big target, right? Everybody just get to shoot at me all day.
Well, to be fair,
yeah,
you were the one that stands up and says your piece, and stands up and says, try your best, take your shots, because you also send out those shots.
I sort of feel like I can't let people think for 1 second that, like, I'm a punk or I'm a chump or, it's okay to say certain things, because to me, I just feel like once they get to do things like that, they get to keep pecking at you.
This beef has like 3 different moments over the last 10 years, but the one that happens in 2019 is the most significant, because unlike the years before with the Meek Mill drama where Drake was satisfied with subliminals, a few lines here and there, or just fully ignored it, a fully charged up Drake, recognizing his position at the top of the hip hop world, responds to Pusha T's most recent diss with the scathingly strong Duppy freestyle. And it's really interesting as an artifact of who Drake is at this point in the career. Before now, Drake probably never would have fully responded to Pusha T's direct disses except for a few subliminal lines. But the Duppy freestyle, for my money, is probably his best diss track ever.
Y'all let a spitting image of whatever jealousy breeds. Don't push me when I'm in album mode. You're not even top 5 as far as your label talent goes. You send shots, well, I gotta challenge those.
And so with that energy and confidence, Duppy Freestyle to me is probably to date the best diss track Drake has ever made. It employs all of the bravado that he in many ways had earned in the previous decade of his career, going from the sideshow put upon rapper that everyone seemed to tolerate and openly dismiss to now the legitimate, most powerful, most successful, biggest rapper in the game and the world. But it also further reveals Drake's true colors. Drake goes straight for the jugular, bringing up Pusha T's wife in a throwaway line that he didn't even really need.
Holla at me when you multi-million. I told you keep playing with my name and I'ma let it ring on you like Virginia Williams.
In fact, the whole song is more personal than rap disses have been in previous generations. Rap beef and diss tracks are often about insulting another rapper's career, expressing how much better you are, maybe bringing up notable L's and bad looks, etc. The only time I can ever remember a wife or girlfriend being brought up was from Jay-Z's Super Ugly, which was a response to Nas's Ether, which landed with a thud. Nobody liked it and was feeling it. Jay-Z reportedly got a call from his mom to shut things down and take the loss afterward. But here was Drake bringing up Pusha T's wife kind of out of the blue. He indeed was fully charged up, but he unfortunately wasn't prepared. Pusha T had laid a trap and was hoping that Drake escalated things in some type of false flag strategy so that his next diss, the story of Adidon, would feel deserved. But even with that preface, the story of Adidon still stands to me as the cruelest, most ugly thing to have ever happened to any celebrity in some type of public feud.
Did you wake up this morning feeling bad at all?
No. For what?
Now, I mean, he did mention your fiance's name, so I guess it was,
yes,
you know what, the gloves are off.
Listen, all bets are off because of that. That alone causes all bets to be off.
In the story of Adidon, Pusha T makes fun of Drake's friend who was suffering from some type of autoimmune disease at the time.
Tick, tick, tick. How much time he got, that man is 666.
He makes fun of Drake's biracial angst and his history of trying hard to fit in.
Confused, always felt you weren't black enough. Afraid to grow it cause your fro wouldn't nap enough.
But then he takes things to a level never seen before in hip hop or really outside of like anime.
We talking character, let me keep with the facts. You are hiding a child, let that boy come home. Deadbeat motherfucker playing border patrol.
He exposes that Drake had a baby with a former adult film star that he was hiding in another country, allegedly for the purpose of announcing his presence with an Adidas campaign that would be worth millions. It was a savage attack on everything Drake had built and was building. It killed any semblance left of Drake's nice guy facade, which had been dying a slow and ugly death up until this point. It took away from him this possibly amazing moment as a father, the opportunity to enter his child into the world on his own terms, and probably cost him millions of dollars since this Adidas campaign that was allegedly happening was obviously canceled.
And when I was making the record, in Response, which was a real record, I know people think it's like some myth. It was like on this Vinyls beat, and I just found myself saying things that like one seemed really out of character just because I was like deeply invested in the situation and getting very angry. I just realized that like nobody cares about this guy, so it's not really much I can say better than Drake has a baby. He won. You know, he won off that.
A lot of people get on Drake for stopping the beef after that, but honestly, it either would have had to have been hands or I just gotta move on, because like I couldn't imagine having something planned for my son or sons and like fucking Vosh does a video about it before No one had ever taken a bigger L in the history of hip hop, and it devastated Drake.
I have no desire to ever mend anything with that person. And yeah, that situation just went, you know, it just went where it went. And it's just, there's no turning back. It's not like those other situations.
There is no greater evidence or indication of the change in hip hop's cultural standard in the fact that this devastating series of events had basically no real consequences for Drake's career. In previous years, huge losses and personal beefs in hip hop, along with mediocre music, would signal the end of a rapper's career. Cannabis was being looked at as the future king of New York before LL Cool J did him dirty in their battle. 50 Cent ended Ja Rule's reign as one of the top rappers in the game with his diss records. And Eminem brutalized Machine Gun Kelly so bad that he switched genres. Losing a rap beef doesn't guarantee that your career is over, but it should sting for a while. And in Drake's case, to be exposed the way he was, to have his nice guy facade that had already been crumbling evaporate in an instant, that should have fundamentally changed his presence in hip hop, but it didn't, because the culture had changed. It didn't matter that Drake had ghostwriters and had been embarrassed in front of the rap world and was called out for being inauthentic and wearing blackface because pretty white girls were doing TikTok dances to his songs within a few months. Drake at this point had the game on lock, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. And it wasn't on lock in the cool, impressive way like Peyton Manning or LeBron James or Michael Jackson, where you just recognize that they were winning all the time because they earned it, because they were truly great and they just couldn't be stopped by anyone in their purview. This is more like when you're like playing an old fighting game and someone's playing a character who is clearly broken or has one move that they can do that's impossible to stop because people didn't design the game very well. There's no skill involved. There's nothing to be impressed by other than the willingness that this person has to degrade the game down to a level where it's not fun anymore. That's basically what the Tootsie Slide was. Right foot up, left foot slide. I can't think of anything more cynical than this song. And not long after all of this, I made a video called Drake and the Death of Hip Hop, because as far as I could tell, hip hop was dead. Now, old heads and older heads have been claiming hip hop to be dead for like a decade at this point, and I had always felt like they were overreacting. And I want to be clear, if you're saying hip hop is dead, like genuinely, not like kind of ironically or tongue in cheek, you're not paying attention to hip hop. Modern hip hop music is low key better than it's ever been, at least since the 90s, as an artistic form and genre. However, there are parts of hip hop that are definitely dying, mainly the world and era where rappers were considered huge and influential megastars. Like, I went and looked up various records of like the top streaming rappers of all time, and so many of them made their first album in the mid or early 2000s. A few made them in the 90s. And aside from Travis Scott and a couple of rappers who are literally dead, such as XXXTentacion, Juice WRLD, and Mac Miller, when you look at modern rap stars, almost none of them made music before 2015 that get to that super top tier level. All the rap headliners across the world are people my age or older. Nicki Minaj, Eminem, Drake, Kanye somehow still. New rappers can't penetrate the global landscape to become megastars the way that Kanye and 50 were 15 years ago. This is for a lot of reasons and could apply to a lot of things in our media, movies, TV shows. So much of our media has been really poisoned by the creep of capitalism and how it's changed the arts. But it does say something that if you look at the top 100 songs at any point in time in the last few years, you're going to find way more country songs and pop songs than hip hop songs. And because of that, I proclaim Drake to be the king of this era in decline. And that video ends with this long shot panning in on Drake, sitting on a throne with skulls surrounding him. Because soon hip hop will only be a niche genre where you still get your Denzel Curry and your Jid and whatnot, but there will never be another Drake or Kendrick or Kanye or Pac or Big or Rakim or Run DMC. A whole lineage of rap megastars that were significant in hip hop and rap culture and black culture and American culture. That role is gone. Unless something truly changes, I don't think anyone will ever be that big again. So in my head, that video was like a eulogy to the past, but also an autopsy. Because to me, it was clear there was no chance hip hop will ever be that big again. But it was our fault. We kind of set that into motion well before it came into fruition. So really, there was no point complaining about it. The damage had been done and we had lost. It'd be best to fade out gracefully and appreciate what we had while we still had it and cherish the memories that still remain. That video came out in 2022. There have been almost 50 years of hip hop to appreciate. It doesn't matter what the future holds because it just looked bleak. And then Kendrick Lamar came back.
Tell me.
Tell me.
I've been going through something.
After a 5-year absence and near silence in the culture, Kendrick Lamar returned with Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. So much had happened during that time. Trump had came and went. It was still in the thick of COVID, and the world seemed more unstable than ever, and hip-hop was in a weird place. What better time than now for hip-hop's most acclaimed and forward-thinking artist to return and set things right and give us what he gave with TPAP, to give us hope. Maybe we would listen this time and things would be different. We just would need his support.
Kendrick, you texted me at 2:00 in the morning. I feel like I'm fallen. Why do you feel that way?
And this was his response. Take time to support yourself. Take time to heal yourself. That's what I've been focused on.
For me now, I have to find a way to understand the space that I'm in and how I'm feeling at the moment. Because if I don't, it's going to zoom. I know, I can feel, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. It just goes, and then you miss out on your moment because you were so in the moment, you didn't know the moment was going on. Yeah. If that makes sense.
But others, even those who were fans of Kendrick, were put off by the sheer humanity and rawness of what came in this record. To me, the most enduring thesis of this album and the song most relevant to the coming events that happen in this battle is actually a song that's technically not a part of the album in The Heart Part 5. Before every album, Kendrick releases a song kind of previewing maybe either the essence of what the album is going to be or at least whatever's on his mind at the time. And it's called the Heart series. And here, after such a long hiatus, it's clear that Kendrick had been paying attention to what's been happening in hip hop and hip hop culture, and he's concerned. The Heart Part 5, in a way, is his desperate plea for hip hop and the people that made it to possibly course correct and reset things in order to save it from the bleak future that it seems to be heading toward. Or at a minimum, follow the example that he's about to present as a possible way forward. And when you listen to much of what this rap battle ends up talking about in terms of his criticisms of Drake, you can see how he telegraphs these ideas in The Heart Part 5. But Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers and The Heart Part 5 received a mixed reception. Unlike TPAP, where everyone could at least agree that it was a great album, don't let these goofies on the internet fool you today to believe that when TPAP dropped, it wasn't universally praised by everyone, not just the Anthony Fantanos and other rap nerds of the world. TPAP was a classic album immediately upon arrival. It's just weirdos on the internet now that are trying to tell you that it was boring. It was never boring.
Dare I say a Kendrick classic?
Yeah.
Man, they've been saying that this round 2, but
listen,
you know my thoughts.
Kendrick, I'll be the first one to tell you, I'm not quick to give out the classic title.
Hey, I'm not either.
But Mr. Morale didn't even have that type of response. Some people legit called it boring when it came out, complained about the fact that it didn't go hard enough and it didn't bump. And some maybe fairly criticized the message was watered down by Kendrick's clumsy inclusion of known sexual abuser Kodak Black, as well as other imperfect attempts at making grand points. Now, this doesn't mean that it wasn't widely praised and well received by the majority of people. It wasn't at all the dud that Drake fans try to depict it to be right now. But I'm sure from Kendrick's perspective, it had to be another deep disappointment that he attempted to change the world through his art again, and it was again rejected. And I imagine from Drake's perspective, he had to be nervous hearing that Kendrick was returning, but seeing this response to Mr. Morale probably made Drake feel really safe. It made him feel like he'd be able to maintain his spot, if not just for the fact that Kendrick didn't seem as interested in him or the throne like he did a decade earlier. And I don't think there were any subliminals from Kendrick and Mr. Morale, at least not many that I caught. And after Mr. Morale, Kendrick went back to kind of minding his business and didn't do much else other than show up with his cousin Baby Keem a few times just for funsies. So it would seem that any type of conflict over the throne of hip hop and the dominant GOAT of this era was over. Kendrick moved on from being concerned about competing with Drake in that way. But I think it's safe to say now that this was not the case, and maybe was never the case, as other things begin to slide into place over the next year. Drake, since his beef with Pusha T and the disappearance of Kendrick that had just ended, had released 5 albums, with most of them being seen as underwhelming. The time between 2022 and 2023 is probably the most disappointing and tepid era of Drake's career. Scorpion by many was considered mid, but Certified Lover Boy and Honestly Nevermind and For All the Dogs were considered even worse. His collaboration with 21 Savage, Her Loss, was received pretty well, but it was also a collaboration album, so you can't fully give him credit. But on For All the Dogs, Drake's most recent album from late 2023, he again collaborates with upcoming artists such as Tizo Touchdown and Sexy Red, but there's also a surprise appearance by one J. Cole. J. Cole is a side story in this whole discourse that I just don't have time to fully explain. His early music was actually relatively close to Drake, but his later music is much closer to Kendrick. He's a part of what is considered the big 3 in hip hop of this era, with Drake and Kendrick Lamar, and in a weird way, no matter who you put as the number 1 in the big 3, J. Cole is always number 2. Like if you're a Drake fan, you'll put Drake first, Cole second, Kendrick third. And if you're a Kendrick fan, you put Kendrick first, Cole second, Drake third. And Cole, unlike Kendrick and Drake, is much less interested in grand narratives about who he is and where he might lie in hip hop history, and has on numerous occasions shown that he doesn't care much about how he's regarded historically. He just wants to be the best artist he can be. But he does appear on this song on the Drake record, and it's the first time where any 2 of the big 3 have been on the same song since Drake did a song with Kendrick Lamar way back in 2015. So we're talking darn near an entire decade. And the song is amazing. It's a really big hit, and it's the spectacle of it all that makes the difference. Because in that time since 2015, all 3 of these rappers had elevated to be such major, like significant voices in hip hop, it felt like them coming together would be like the Avengers coming together for the first time. And there is even a part of me that wishes Kendrick would have been there on that song. But as a consolation prize, Cole, with his, constant love of his peers, shouted out Kendrick in his verse, showing respect to him as a member of the big 3 at the top of the hip hop game of their era. And this was a mistake. So as I just alluded to, it's widely believed and all but confirmed now that Drake made an attempt to get Kendrick Lamar on this song. And I imagine that Drake had it in his head that he would allow both Kendrick and Cole to outshine him on the song, because if you go and you listen to First Person Shooter, it's pretty clear that J. Cole ran laps around Drake lyrically. But it's still Drake's song on Drake's album, so it kind of evens out. I imagine he would have extended the same courtesy to Kendrick. Kendrick doesn't get on the song with pretty much anyone without trying to destroy that person pretty much since he's been in the game. However, Kendrick declined, but months later, it's clear that he heard himself mentioned as a part of this big 3 by Cole on this song. And here we are. I can only imagine that hearing this either unlocked something inside Kendrick that maybe he had pushed to the side during his healing journey, or if you ask me, this was something he had in mind for a long time. Going back to what Kendrick does in The Heart Part 5, that song is this plea for hip hop to save itself. He's darn near crying, weeping for this thing that he loves, this thing that has done so much for him, to get back to some semblance of the true art form that it could be, instead of this microwaved TikTok sound, 2-minute long song, disposable stuff that it's been for basically the last decade. It was a plea for people to listen to him and follow the direction he's pointing in, but people didn't seem to get the picture. He wasn't speaking their language anymore. The culture had deteriorated so much into that microwave reality that they didn't have the capacity to sit through a song longer than 2 minutes and 30 seconds. He still had the purists and hardcore fans, but we're getting old. We're dying, literally. And as with any art form, if the youth aren't engaged, then that art form is essentially dead. So he needed to pop out and show niggas exactly why they needed to be paying attention. And to do that, he'd have to make an example out of the very core of the problem from his perspective. he needed to destroy Drake.
You are the greatest rapper alive.
I got to. I'm so passionate about hip hop, man. Like, I don't know what era everybody else come from, but I listened, man. Like,
So here we are finally at the beginning of the actual battle. After a decade of sneak disses and Cold War activities, we understand why and how Drake and Kendrick aren't just two famous rappers, they're two opposing ideologies regarding artistry and hip hop, and one is about to force the other in a situation that will make it so that only one of them will survive with their legacy intact. In March of 2024, a few months after the release of For All the Dogs, Future and Metro Boomin, a notable hip-hop producer, released a collaborative album called We Don't Trust You. I'm not a huge Future fan, so I don't pay it any mind until I check Twitter the next day, and all I see are updates about Kendrick taking shots. And understand, way back since the Control verse, it's always been a big deal whenever Kendrick pops out, but definitely if he's popping out and saying some things about other rappers. Song called Like That, which initially doesn't even list Kendrick as a feature in the title, over a ridiculously hard beat from Metro Boomin. That's a remake of a classic beat and melody that's been used in hip hop for decades. Kendrick delivers some not so subliminal, not really at all subliminal shots, name dropping first person shooter, the song with Cole and Drake on Drake's most recent album, and containing the lines, "Motherfuck the big three, nigga, it's just Big Me." The song lit the hip hop world on fire. After being teased for years but never coming to fruition, this was finally the direct shot at Drake and to a lesser extent Cole from Kendrick Lamar that a lot of his fans and a lot of people within hip hop culture were looking for. This time, unlike earlier with Control and other subliminals, Drake is in a supreme position of power. He has terraformed the world of hip hop media and culture in his image. The cultural zeitgeist moved away from what Kendrick is best at. Now it's all about 2-minute party songs and streamers reacting to whatever it is you're doing. And Drake literally has the number of all the top streamers that are connected to hip hop culture in his pocket to carry water for him and to present whatever narrative or message that he wants to the world. And I initially thought that this was a reason that Drake would use to not respond at all because he had so much power and nothing to prove. But ironically, I realize now that's exactly why he kind of did have to respond. He just needed to find the right time and opportunity to do so. The cult of personality and clout demons that are Drake's new fans in the last few years would not allow him to not respond. They are okay with the ghostwriting. They're okay with the underage girls. They're okay with the weirdo behavior. But after Drake had so handily lost to Pusha T, running from this battle with Kendrick, an artist and fan base that was opposed to their existence, would be unacceptable. And there's good reason for this. I'm just gonna be honest. If Drake is your favorite rapper, you're probably a loser, or at least like the most boring person that any of your friends know. And also possibly shitty and into underage girls and just like weirdo shit, just keeping it real. If that's your favorite rapper, not like you like some Drake songs, not like he goes off in the club, but if you like connect with Drake, if he inspires you, you probably suck. Yeah, we're done with the history part of the video. Drake makes vapid, disposable music about not having any real friends and feeling like he can't trust anyone, not being in good relationships, chasing toxic women, doing drugs, and not in a cool, yeah, we getting high way, but in a let me numb the pain way. That's basically all of his last 4 albums in a nutshell. And I'm not saying that he doesn't make that sound entertaining or at least catchy. I'm just saying, if this is your favorite music, your favorite, you probably think Transformers is like an amazing movie. You probably think Vanilla Ice Cream is spicy. This isn't even just a racial thing. Like, that's Drake's white fans and his black fans, his male fans and his female fans and everyone in between. I'm sorry, Drake is vapid. You can like Drake, but to love Drake is to hate goodness. But the thing is, a creator I used to watch a lot with really interesting critiques about art and anime randomly, Trixie the Golden Witch, she said that part of Drake's appeal is the fact that he's number one. Drake's hardcore fans don't really like his music on a meaningful level. They just like being connected to something that they recognize as popular and, easily digestible, not challenging to their boredom and absence of personality. These are people who don't have a unique brain cell in their heads, and they can't even fathom enjoying something on the basis of quality, but they do know what other people say they like. And what's ironic is that because of that, they're probably not even actually giving Drake as much credit as he deserves as an artist. They like One Dance and, Going Home, but they probably think Pound Cake is boring. You've never heard someone be like, man, I heard that new Drake album and it changed my life. At best, it's like, I heard that new Drake album and then I did another set of deadlifts. That's the best you got. And I know there's some people watching this right now, the true Drake stans, that are like saying it's weird and lame to like feel like a song or an album changed your life. And I can't help but feel bad for you if that's how you feel. I genuinely empathize with anyone who hasn't heard a album or even just a song and recognize that they're a different person now that they've heard that album or song. That is a great feeling that maybe a couple of Drake, maybe a little bit, but the people that ride for Drake, the motherfuckers in Drake's Reddit right now, that's not them. But the motherfuckers in Drake's Reddit do know or feel, even some still to this day, that Drake is number one. But if he were to run from this fight, how could he ever say that again and be taken seriously? He would immediately lose so much of the aura that particular fan base was attracted to. And for years now, as Drake has operated this meme lord online base of fans, that was not going to cut it. And these are things I missed. I called Drake a bitch and said he wouldn't respond because these days he only takes shot at women, and that was wrong. I didn't consider that when things are going poorly, when shit gets hard, bitch ass niggas are incredibly dangerous. And so was Drake, at least we thought.
Cause you know how I'm feeling? I got my fucking head up high, my back straight, I'm 10 fucking toes down in Florida or anywhere else I go, and I know that no matter what, it's not a nigga on this earth that can ever fuck with me in my life. And that's how I want you to walk out of here tonight.
But even with all this in mind, I don't think it's an accident that Drake responded 3 weeks later after a second Metro Boomin and Future album release called We Still Don't Trust You. And it didn't feature more disses from Drake, but it did get some disses from one A$AP Rocky. In the time since A$AP had toured with Drake in 2012, he went on to get together with Rihanna, one of the biggest pop stars of the era and one of the most desirable women in all of pop or hip hop culture and one of the richest. And for Drake, the one woman who seems to have gotten away.
I'm actually writing for Rihanna right now.
Rihanna, yeah?
Yeah.
There's a lot of rumors about you were seen kissing her and stuff like that. So, I mean,
we've been in the same vicinity before,
Drake is weird with all his exes, like pretty much all of them. But specifically with Rihanna, they dated between 2016 and 2018. And it is well documented that after they broke up, he was very petty and bitter and would throw subliminal and not so subliminal shots at her. And then eventually A$AP Rocky, who she began dating after him. Except unlike Drake, A$AP was able to solidify that union and they eventually had a child in 2020. And Drake publicly unfollowed her on social media. I'm not going to say what that makes him look like to regular, sane people, but whatever. A$AP, whose career hadn't been very significant in years, took a moment on this album to shoot back and defend himself after what felt like years of slights from Drake's petulant jealousy. The album also featured The Weeknd, who has been unhappy with Drake for years, ever since the aforementioned Take Care album that Drake won a Grammy for, that he said he wrote most of the music for. It also, I don't even know if it featured Rick Ross. This may not have actually featured Rick Ross, but somehow Rick Ross also got in there.
Your nose fake, your stomach fake, you don't write raps, your biggest homies in foreclosure. Come on, man.
Somehow Rick Ross was also taking shots. Rick Ross had beef with Drake because Drake messed up some business features for him, as well as when they had beef, as is Drake's tradition, Drake flew Rick Ross's ex-girlfriend or baby mama out to a concert for some reason and just, genuinely being a messy, shitty guy. So suddenly it wasn't just Kendrick taking shots at Drake's throne. It was an entire coalition of lesser houses. But this was very much a tactical mistake on their part because it gave Drake an easier way to respond, something that I think would backfire on him over the course of the beef, but it gave him a great starting point that he really didn't have if he would have just had to deal with Kendrick. See, Kendrick had for years been out of the spotlight. Further, Kendrick doesn't have a ton of dirt on him, or at least dirt that can be easily used against him. Most of Kendrick's known dirt, him cheating on his wife and sex addiction and depression and mental health struggles, that's stuff we know about from his own music. So you can dig into that, but it won't have the shock value that Drake is usually looking for. Which is unlike the rest of this coalition. Kendrick is highly successful, widely respected, and it arguably has better music, just less of it. So there's not a ton for Drake to say about Kendrick, except that he's short. But with all of these other figures in the mix, Drake had the benefit of spreading disses out to everyone at a time. He would be able to go an inch deep, but a mile wide. And because he was fighting so many people at once, it looked like he was doing a lot more than he actually was. He would look valiant for standing up for himself against so many people at once. You know how it is when a person's losing a fight, but they don't quit, and we tend to remember that a person didn't give up from their fight over the fact that the other person won the fight? That's kind of what Drake was working with here.
Fight back! Fight back!
So a day after We Still Don't Trust You dropped, 3 weeks since Like That dropped, remember that for later, Drake released Push Ups, and a rap beef over a decade in the making was officially underway. Push Ups is named to make fun of the viral video of Kendrick Lamar doing basically a prison workout in a park or something, listening to old R&B. Drake talks about Kendrick's perceived bad deals with his record label, a deal that means he must not be taking much money home, and that he's far less successful than Drake. And that's kind of it. He implies that this dynamic forces Kendrick to make music with people he know Kendrick doesn't like, such as pop acts like Maroon 5 and Taylor Swift, which is a good jab because for all of Kendrick's Messiah quasi-revolutionary hip-hop aesthetic, him on a Taylor Swift song is odd and kind of corny. He also talks about Kendrick being short again. He's short. He's a little guy. He's a little guy. And I don't care how you feel about this. Short jokes are funny. I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings.
We ain't gonna keep going back and forth with the nigga who too short to get on amusement park rides.
So yeah, like, the song is maybe, let me just check real quick, because this is going to be a running theme here. The song is almost 4 minutes long. We're 10 seconds in. See, don't tell me I don't like Drake. This is pretty good. He said some shit that's just completely not true, but whatever. All right. Yeah. So we're less than 2 minutes into the song, and he's pretty much done talking about Kendrick, and he spends the rest of this 4-minute song dealing with everyone else. He even goes at, I guess, Ja Morant. I didn't even know that was a thing. Anyway, if I'm honest, I felt in my spirit that Drake was pretty much dead as soon as this was released, because this, for what I believed and imagined Kendrick to be at the time, which again was proven, would not be nearly enough for a rapper who could write as well as Kendrick. Kendrick isn't just like the greatest lyricist or whatever, but in terms of writing music, of coming through with thematic elements and like ideas and ways to get across a message, I don't think anybody in the history of hip hop is better than Kendrick Lamar. But I had been so used to seeing Drake win despite losing, despite himself, that I didn't trust that instinct. And so I just assumed that somehow, somewhere, this would still end up being an L for Kendrick. Still, this was not the same Drake from the Duppy freestyle a few years ago. Drake barely even sounded confident. It was also suspicious that a leaked version of this song emerged hours earlier, and it was almost like it was a test run for the whole thing to make sure that people liked it. Drake had been rapping for years about too many pills, too much high life, and his health caused him to take a hiatus a year earlier. He hadn't been sleeping. So he wasn't the same man that he was when he still lost to Pusha T 6 years ago. And Kendrick is no Pusha T. Unlike Drake, Kendrick has spent the last 6 years healing, focusing and getting healthy. Kendrick never really did drugs. He never drank. The video of him doing push-ups wasn't just for promo. That was reflective of his health journey, as the Kendrick of 2023 and 2024 is a good 20, 30 pounds lighter probably than the one we met in 2013. And even though push-ups definitely hyped up Drake supporters and even some people in the middle who were unbiased in the whole situation, like that, the original song was still #1 on the charts, being played at basketball stadiums. In my head, there was no way that Drake would be able to keep up with Kendrick unless he had some type of nuke. But at this time, the hip hop world sat back and waited to see if and when Kendrick would respond. Drake alluded to some rumor that Kendrick had a song written about him from over 4 years ago in Push-Ups. Kendrick was the boogeyman. Surely he'd be ready by the following Friday when all new music was released, but instead, we got a new Taylor Swift album about slavery or something. I don't remember, but it was bad. And it was radio silence from Kendrick. Drake then released the Tailor-Made Freestyle. This song was finally fully aimed at Kendrick, but it was rather light except for the gimmick of using AI voices for Snoop Dogg and the late great Tupac Shakur for the verses. And if we're being honest, on some level, this was a clever move by Drake because it inspired his weirdo internet brain fan base, but it definitely stoked a fire of negativity for the remaining traditional voices in hip hop that thought that this was incredibly offensive to use AI to replicate the voice of a legend like Tupac, especially from someone like Drake. That was beyond the pale. So he ended up having to take this song down and got a lot of criticism for it. And all he did was call Kendrick short again and mention that maybe Kendrick might talk about him being a pedophile, which, I mean, they said he tried to 8 Mile himself here. That doesn't work outside the movies. But I think the real goal here was to needle and annoy Kendrick into making a quicker response. I imagine the silence was nerve-wracking. Kendrick, unlike Drake, doesn't use social media, so to hear nothing for a week when you know what he's capable of, that had to make Drake feel a type of way. That said, it was also presented by many of Drake's water carriers that this was just a warning shot and he was saving his best shot for later. He was saving his nuke, his red button.
This is what Drake just told me. He said, Act, you know I was trying to come off tour and relax. Niggas done fucked up my whole feng shui. He said, now I gotta eat until this debate is done. You know what that means? He's locked in the studio, 10 songs a day, barring up everybody. Ross, you gonna get it too, nigga.
But in the meantime, Kendrick fans had to endure another week of "Where Kendrick at?" comments from academics and others, even went as far as to say that Kendrick somehow had already lost just because he was taking a long time.
This is Kendrick fans. Well, listen, you gotta realize you gotta give Kendrick time while he's working on his album. Yo, I heard the craziest thing. This one nigga on Twitter, he said, y'all could keep having that microwavable shit. Cooked food takes time. Man, that boy just in the room just hitting his head with a number 2 pencil trying to figure out what to write, nigga. He writes slow, and we keep saying, I keep saying, he make moments, he don't make great disses. Drake on his head again, and I'm also here.
And this is stupid on so many levels. The only time that rap beef has ever had to have like immediate responses is when Drake did back-to-back. That was an unheard of thing to have happened. That's a scenario that he created, possibly because he had niggas writing his shit. But if you go back throughout the history of hip-hop and rap beef and battles, responses would take months, sometimes years to happen. If I'm not mistaken, and correct me in the comments with my lore, Jay-Z dissed Nas in like the summer of 2001 at a concert. And then Nas responded like 4 or 5 months later on a mixtape. And then Jay-Z responded like 8 months later with The Takeover. And then Nas responded 4 months after that with Ether. That's like darn near 2 years worth of time between diss tracks. But we're acting like somehow hip hop has always been about instant gratification. But no, that's just some new whack nigga shit. And what made it even sillier is that we were only 2 weeks into waiting for Kendrick to respond, and Drake took a whole 3 weeks to respond. But when that second week passed, I won't lie, I started to worry a little bit. I knew Kendrick would likely respond, but just how long would he wait? Because despite my views and the history of these things, it's impossible to argue this type of logic with like people who are, they'll just say, of this microwave generation of the microwave entertainer. I remember sitting down with my friend Sean and arguing with him that the amount of time wouldn't matter if the response was strong enough. In my head, I figured that if I understood Kendrick's music like I thought I did, if I knew Kendrick's views on hip hop and that they were close to my own, then Kendrick would know exactly what to say in response. I even tagged him on YouTube with my old video just in case he needed inspiration. But now it was Tuesday and still nothing. 17 days after push-ups. And then Euphoria.
Pray for me. I ain't thinking about no reaper. Nigga, I'm reaping what I sow. Everybody wanna be demon till they get chipped by your throwaway. If I catch flight, it's gonna be direct. We hate the bitches you fuck, cause they confuse themselves with real women. Then notice I said we, it's not just me, I'm what the culture feel.
Euphoria is the best song to come out of this beef. It's a multi-layered thesis from Kendrick that perfectly illustrates the difference between him and Drake on numerous levels. The fact that this was Kendrick's first response is indicative of his values as a hip-hop purist, but also, while I definitely believe that he always planned to take the battle to uglier places that he eventually would, and we'll get there, I think it was very purposeful and symbolic that he started the battle with this pure distillation of what hip-hop diss records traditionally were meant to be versus what they've devolved into in recent years. Lil Bill, my arch nemesis, made a great video that analyzed the nature of the diss track that you all should watch to kind of get the greater context there. Link will be in the description. But in it, he points out that historically diss tracks weren't meant to be TMZ style exposés on rappers' personal lives. They were supposed to be extensions of classical Black traditions of signifying and playing the dozens, literal rapping, oral traditions among Black people that can be traced all the way back to Africa, showcasing one's lyrical and analytical abilities while breaking down why their opponent is inherently inferior. This is why most hip-hop fans my age see Ether as a superior diss track to The Takeover. The Takeover is by far the superior and most listenable song, but Ether is far superior as a breakdown of everything wrong with Jay-Z as a man and an artist. So Euphoria exists in that framework, but also beyond it. I'm not going to go all Lyric Genius breakdown of any of these diss tracks, but I will spend a lot of time at least getting into the major themes where I see it fit. And Euphoria does a lot of crafting around major themes that would be relevant throughout this entire battle. Euphoria starts out with this smooth melodic Teddy Pendergrass sample and Kendrick slowly coasting over it in the jazzy fashion that he's been criticized for doing too much of since T-Pab.
Them superpowers getting neutralized. I can only watch in silence. The famous actor we once knew is looking paranoid and now spiraling.
Initially, people saw this first part as him just warming things up, but you'll realize later that this was Kendrick telegraphing everything that was going to happen in the battle. He calls Drake a paranoid degenerate that fabricates and manipulates things.
Feeling distasteful. Why calculate? You're not as calculated. I can even predict your angle. Fabricating stories on the family front cause you heard Mr. Morale.
He calls Drake an actor. He implies that Drake doesn't understand Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. He says his own music electrifies people while Drake's pacifies.
Tommy Hilfiger stood out, but FUBU never had been your collection. I make music that electrify 'em. You make music that pacify 'em.
Seemingly nothing special to say, but all super important telegraphs of future events. And the whole thing starts with a backward sample from The Wizard of Oz, where Richard Pryor, playing the Wizard of Oz, admits that the great story he had built up for himself is all lies, that he's a phony.
Everything they say about me is true. I'm a phony. I got no powers. I got no right to be pretending to be the Wiz. I got nothing. Hocus pocus.
So you see how we're already getting a certain narrative across in the song. He then ends that section with,
but don't tell no lie about me, and I won't tell truths about you.
Okay, which is a recall from a song called The Heart Part 4, where Kendrick says the same thing. And it was suspected that this was also aimed at Drake way back in the day. But it becomes more prophetic at this point and at later points. And then the song really starts, and I know I said I won't break things down bar for bar, but don't mistake that for this song not having bars. The Park Your Sons bars.
Since daddy a killer, he wanna be junior, they must have forgot the shit that they done. Dementia must run in his family, but let it get Park Your Son. The very first time I shot me a Drake, the homie.
The flow switch up to Shade J. Cole is amazing. The YNW Melly bar was a haymaker, and its setup and payoff is probably the most impressive lyrical flourishes of the whole battle, and an example of what sets Drake apart from Kendrick.
Cole and Nabi know I'm a selfish nigga. The crown is heavy. I pray they my real friends. If not, I'm YNW Melly. I don't like you shit that for real for you.
And there's also these little performance flourishes that Kendrick has always had. The fact that he's willing to play a character and do these unexpected unexpected things with his voice while rhyming. I'm sure I'm not the only person that's been yelling, what is it, the braids? And Pusha T for months now. My personal favorite is, I don't give a fuck who you hang with. Like, that's just, it's like he's talking to his son. The voices that Kendrick uses are voices that if you've grown up in a certain black atmosphere, you've heard your whole life, and that's why they work on like multiple levels. But the true essence and value of this record as a diss track and a song comes in the middle, where Kendrick speaks to me his most honest truth and the guiding force of this battle for him, his intense hatred of Drake and everything he stands for.
Let me say I'm the biggest hater. I hate the way that you walk, the way that you talk. I hate the way that you dress. I hate the way that you sneak.
And if we want to like extrapolate what those things mean beyond the surface level, he's talking about the way Drake pretends to be something that he's not, pretends to be something that is hip hop, that isn't hip hop, but has been so successful in this performance that he's changed hip hop into this fake facade that he created so that he couldn't be real. Kendrick is a disciple, a zealot of hip hop, its origins and principles. Drake is a pop star who's been allowed undue and harmful influence over hip hop for well over a decade. And the fact that this is even possible, that Drake can even exist, is an affront to Kendrick in his head and to hip hop culture as a whole. Kendrick goes on to engage with Drake's Tragic Mulatto nonsense and how he has complained that he's not been seen as black by his peers. This was a contentious point, partially because a lot of the less significant diss tracks by like Rick Ross released weeks before this had this habit of calling Drake white boy.
White boy, BBL Drizzy, I got a question.
But for the record, from my perspective, and I think most people would agree, this has never been about Drake's blackness. It's always been a critique about the way Drake responds to and weaponizes blackness in insidious and exploitative ways. When Kendrick says,
I even hate when you say the word nigga, but that's just me, I guess.
He's not explicitly saying Drake shouldn't be able to say the word nigga because he's not black. He's literally saying the way Drake says the word nigga and uses the word nigga is wrong. And we have video evidence for this, by the way.
Be like, yo, that's that nigga. You know what I'm saying? He's doing his thing. He opened for Jay.
That hard ER. That's, yeah.
That's gotta be racist. There's no way. I'm gonna just keep it real. There's no way that is like of our culture.
That's y'all boy. That's y'all boy. That's y'all. I'm gonna say something controversial here. If Drake were a darker skinned black man, he'd probably have at best Ja Rule's career. And at worst, he might be that guy Mims. Remember Mims? Like 0203. This is why I'm hot. This is why I'm hot. This is why I'm hot. That could have been Drake. You're lucky that it's not. Oh, that was bad. But you get the point. Drake has always made entertaining hit music. He's always been a good rapper. But what made him Drake, what made him transcend, was his ability as an actor to use specific angles of his persona and what his persona was even tenuously connected to, and use that to push him into spaces where he really didn't belong. Initially, as I mentioned earlier, Drake was this crooner and lover of black women. But then when he started to show his true colors, his proximity to whiteness, his lighter skin, his flashy and flamboyant personality actually make him the perfect figure, the perfect actor to present blackness to non-black fans.
Anita Max win.
It allows them to fixate on him as an avatar, cosplaying what they assume is the black experience. Drake, like many white rappers, but again, not a white rapper, was in that category of, I don't listen to rap, but I really like blank. So that used to be that blank, that used to be Eminem.
Yeah, this one seems nice. I like this one. This is a good one. Everyone knows it.
That's like his best song in my opinion.
I don't really like rap, but for the people who do, I recommend this.
But then it became Drake. And I think this is why a lot of Drake's fans took this, I hate the way you say the word nigga point, all in the wrong direction, because they don't understand that it was or maybe they do understand that it was a direct critique of their presence in hip hop culture and how really nobody wants them there, but because they're invited there by Drake, it was like we had to put up with them. And this sudden critique or attack on Drake was also an attack on their presence and maybe signaled that they weren't going to be put up with anymore. So they called this racist. Even Drake called the shit racist. There's a reason why this nigga lost.
Calling a guy racist that is going to use the fact that you're not in the culture and you're a white boy, you're kind of proving that.
Oh, I hear you.
You know what I mean?
Huge
misstep.
As a white guy, I was like, that is kind of racist. I kind of related to that the most of anything. That was the best diss I've ever seen.
Fellow Nebula member Volts Guys pointed out in his video about this battle that Drake has had minimal connection to the Black American experience, and thus he performs blackness based on his consumption of Black culture from an outsider perspective. And you know who else does that? Like 75% of white hip hop fans. So to them, Drake has been a godsend. Because he makes their cosplaying of Black aesthetics, their pretend fantasy of this must be what it feels like to be Black and be cool and have swag and all that, he makes it real. He validates that shit. He centers them in the world of hip hop so that they can be just as legitimate and relevant within the culture as anyone with a more genuine connection to the art form. It's no surprise to me that as we see the rise of Drake, we also see the emergence of Vlad TV and Adam 22 and Trap Royal Loss. I should, keep that shit in. Fuck that dude. But also Black grifters like Academics, who for my money is the worst of them all. All of these figures made their names in hip hop culture by consuming the Black dysfunction around them and making a commodity from it to sell back to these largely white audiences, cashing in on the suffering of Black people and not having them get any gain out of the equation. And the fact that many of Drake's fans, and surprisingly Michael Eric Dyson's goofy ass, doesn't recognize that this is what the argument is exactly why white sensibilities on hip hop and race should never be the focal point of hip hop. Kendrick goes on to take a few more shots at Drake's ghostwriting history that was still going on to this day with no consequence.
Ain't 20v1, it's 1v20 if I gotta smack niggas that right with you. Yeah, bring them out too, I clean them out too, tell Bean that.
The way that his Canadian crew imitate the culture born out of Black American struggle.
Yeah, OV-ho niggas is dick riders. Tell them run to America to imitate heritage. They can't imitate this violence. What I learned is niggas don't.
There's more I can say, but y'all got lyric genius. I don't want to, I ain't about to waste my time. My leg falling asleep. The point is that for me, all I wanted in this battle was this song. I wanted Euphoria as this perfect distillation of really the entire hour-long video I made, but also every critique that the purist, gatekeeper adjacent Drake haters have been making for a decade really came through in this 6.5 minute song. Further, I had no belief that Drake actually had the ability to break down and attack Kendrick in the way Kendrick had just did to him. He wouldn't be able to refute much of what Kendrick had just put out there either. In fact, that was the only criticism that many of Drake's peers would offer, is that Kendrick isn't saying anything new that people haven't heard. And that's true on some level, which is actually awful, because what it means is that Drake's fans have known all these awful things about him for years and it hasn't mattered. That says something about them. It supports all that shit I was saying earlier, but that's also not really true either. Pusha T did touch briefly on the Tragic Mulatto bullshit. Meek spoke on the ghostwriting stuff, but everyone's always went the route of calling Drake soft and weak and that he's not a gangster, which is all true, but Kendrick left that mostly alone. The way Kendrick was able to weave in numerous levels of tributes to Black artistry, analyze and break down the cancer's effect that Drake had on hip hop, preview all the ways that Drake would fuck up in this battle and have wrong-headed attacks against him, and all the ways that Kendrick would fuck Drake up in this battle, and still manage to make fun of him for getting liposuction and being a bad father. That's not only a top-tier diss track, it's also a meta commentary on the huge gap between them and the battle itself before the battle had fully played out. And to hear this from Kendrick was significant because Meek wasn't that big. Pusha was basically a C-tier guy when he exposed Drake. None of them had the magnitude to spread this message at a wide scale, but Kendrick did. So to me, at this point, the battle was already over. But of course, we still had to allow Drake to respond. And I predicted that in the face of such a scathing critique, with Drake being essentially out of shape to do this type of battle, considering the lifestyle he had been living for the last few years, he would probably have to go low. And I wasn't the only one who saw this coming. A few days pass, and unlike Kendrick, Drake is posting cryptic tweets and memes on his Instagram account.
There was that moment where Drake went on IG stories and posted a clip apparently from the movie 10 Things I Hate About You.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know the movie. So my question was, Was that intentionally the whitest thing ever to post, sarcastically?
Yes.
Because
and also feeding talking points to academics. They're threatening to hit the red button and drop a nuke on Kendrick, and he's about to bury him. He posts a movie scene from The Equalizer where Denzel Washington's character says he's going to kill everyone, and his only regret will be that he only gets to do it once. And I'll admit, as corny as all this shit is, I'm still a little worried because, as I said, in my head, I had seen all of this before. Drake has been counted out and underestimated many, many times, and for good reasons. And for most of those times, even when he loses, he still comes out on top. And this still has to be a big deal for Drake because he's fighting for his legacy as a rapper. He was never going to win over a large chunk of hardcore hip hop fans, ever. But if he was to defeat Kendrick in this beef, in this battle handily, they could never say anything about him again. New music drops at midnight on Friday. So Thursday night, we start hearing rumblings that Drake is dropping, the red button is about to be pushed, and then nothing. This isn't talked about a lot, but I remember it seemed like there were legitimate sources saying that something was going to drop, and then it didn't. But the source was an academic, so it basically wasn't official, all things considered. Still, when you think about the way things played out over the next 48 hours, you have to wonder if something maybe spooked Drake into doing a pump fake that night. The next morning, everyone wakes up to another Kendrick diss track. Kendrick was suddenly doing to Drake what Drake did to Meek. This second shorter song, 616 in LA, is less scathing than the first, but it has some really interesting elements to it. Firstly, the cover image of the song is a picture of a black Maybach driving glove, and it seems weirdly purposeful. I theorize immediately that the picture itself is a subliminal message to Drake. It's meant to imply that Kendrick has the drop on him in a way that he doesn't realize, and the song itself conveys this over its two parts. The first part is really just a lyrical flourish by Kendrick. It's just him rapping his ass off.
Off-white Sunseeker at the marina. Fuck a phantom, I like to buy yachts when I get the fever. Wine cooler spill on my white t-shirt, the sightseer.
Drake is a good lyricist, he's a good rapper, but he can't do what Kendrick did in the first half of this song, and I think that was the purpose of even having that there, since it didn't have anything to do with Drake, but has everything to do with what Kendrick is versus what Drake is, or I should say what Drake isn't.
Tell me who gon' stop me. I come from love, Estelle, cover my heart, then open me up. Remember when, picked up a pen, lyrics that I can trust.
But the second part of the song begins to paint a picture. Kendrick implies that he has a mole inside of Drake's crew. He name drops academics and points out the folly of Drake having so many people on his team, insinuating that it's impossible to remain secure with so much at stake and that many people in your business.
100 niggas that you got on salary, and 20 of them want you as a casualty, and one of them is actually next to you, and 2 of them is practically tired of your lifestyle, just don't got the audacity to tell you, but let me tell you some game, cause
He also implies that Drake has been digging on dirt on him and finding nothing, almost as a warning to keep things above the belt or things would get ugly.
It was fun until you start to put money in the streets, then lost money cause they came back with no receipts. I'm sorry that I live a boring life, I love peace, but war ready if the world is ready to see him bleed.
Everyone paying attention ruminates on the real purpose of this song for the entire day, unsure of what to make of it. It wasn't really the most impactful attack by itself. It felt like a warning shot, and it was like, what exactly is this warning us of? By late Friday night, we're now hearing through Twitter and Instagram and whatnot that Drake is definitely responding that night. Unlike Kendrick, who is dropped randomly at every juncture now, Drake is making sure to have an audience for what he is about to do. He hypes it up on Instagram. He texts Kai Cenat being the biggest streamer in youth and urban culture right now, that he shouldn't end his stream early and to make sure that everybody's around to watch.
Drake has just texted me. Drake has said, stay on stream.
And thus, all of the influencer world associated with hip hop is on call and up paying attention for whatever it is Drake is about to do. This mysterious red button, this nuke, this thing that he's been hyping up to for days now. At around 11:30 Friday, May 3rd, Drake drops Family Matters. And for a split second, I was a little worried.
Nigga, fuck that shit. I don't care about this Jigsaw. Have you ever played? Have you ever? Fuck that. Let's get to this.
Meet the Grams.
I can't figure out a useful way to convey to you all the moment where everyone realized that within minutes of Drake dropping Family Matters, Kendrick had already responded.
Why y'all saying Kendrick dropped? No, he didn't. Meet the Grahams, 6 minutes. What the What's happening?
It was probably around 12 a.m. by then. I had just finished listening to Drake's Family Matters with my wife in bed, and I was immediately not all that impressed, but I couldn't lie that it wasn't a good, catchy song and made me want to lift weights. But I immediately saw flaws that I'll get to in a moment. But still, I knew that it was strong enough that the battle couldn't be considered over, that it would be debatable until there was another round of music. My wife, who sadly is a bit of a Drake apologist, was just beginning to try to make an argument when I got a phone call from my frat brother, Sean. Yo. Sean is also a bit of a Drake apologist, and I'm immediately starting to argue that I don't think this was a battle ender, and before I can get that sentence out of my mouth, I hear him say, Kendrick dropped. Again. Just now? I'll call you back. So me and my wife open the laptop back up and we go find it, and the first thing we see is the cover of the song, and my theory about 616 is confirmed because we see that same picture zoomed out with literal receipts for God knows what, along with various pills and prescription with Drake's name on it: Ozempic, Adderall, and Zolpidem something, which is a sleeping aid that's also well known to be used as a date rape drug. You might want to call bullshit on these items and whether they're valid, but Drake, who went on to try to deny a lot of what comes next, oh boy, just you wait. He never denies the validity of these items, and his sword swallower academics later confirms that they are real. I know most of the people watching this video weren't awake that night, or if they were awake, they weren't locked in. And I feel bad for you because as a musical event, for those who were invested at least, who had a reason to be up at 11:45, 12 o'clock at night, this was literally a once in a lifetime moment. Meet the Grahams wasn't a song we all listened to. It was a song we survived.
Oh my God, what's going on? What is going on? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. This is actually insane. He didn't even let this nigga breathe.
I think it's being underplayed how diabolical this was, and how this to me is evidence that this was a planned elimination of Drake that started well before Like That came out. And as we continue to the very end of this battle, you can't help but feel like Drake was on some supervillain or movie serial killer shit, putting things into place, staying multiple steps ahead of Drake the entire time. And all of this was coming into clarity to a lot of people before we even pressed play at 12 a.m., before we even had the chance to digest what Drake had to say from his song. Kendrick had been planning this, and he left no room for any other outcome outside of his victory. This wasn't a rap beef. This was a public execution. And the true wickedness of Meet the Grahams is immediately apparent in its first haunting moment.
Dear Adonis, I'm sorry that man is your father. Let me be honest.
No.
Not a letter to his son, bro.
Kendrick starts out with the lines, Dear Adonis, directly naming Drake's son, and goes on essentially apologizing to Adonis for him having to have Drake as a dad. He doesn't spend a lot of time there, but mostly uses Adonis as a vector to attack Drake's manhood, his lack of discipline and conviction, his feebleness in his character. He tells Adonis not to take shortcuts like his dad, not to allow himself to be disrespected like his dad, alluding to the moment where Drake was peed on in public that I've already talked about multiple times, but I can't not say that enough. This man got peed on in public and didn't do anything about it. And what this does further is imply the difference between Kendrick and Drake, the ways that Kendrick has faced his demons and challenges versus Drake's perpetual boyhood and Peter Pan syndrome. Kendrick goes on to repeat this process with Drake's parents, where he accuses them of being partially responsible for Drake's degeneracy, finally bringing up in this song Drake's questionable behavior with women and young girls. He then writes a third letter to an alleged second child of Drake, who Kendrick's camp claims they fully know exists, but no proof has been found. And I'm stopped there for now because for obvious reasons that I don't want to get too far into that. But he does imply that Drake has multiple other children. And with a little Googling, you will find stories of paternity tests and lawsuits and court cases around Drake from the previous decade regarding illegitimate children. Lastly, he writes a letter to Drake himself, and it's an almost sickening read of Drake's entire facade. He brings up Drake's childhood wounds of never feeling like he belongs, never fitting in, not having his father around, not having confidence in himself, and how that feeds into his behavior today. And he ends with this haunting tirade emphasized by some clever musical flourishes about the many lies of Drake, but not the lies that he specifically tells through his mouth. It's the lie that exists at its very core. Ending in one of the most damning lines of the entire battle: fuck a rap battle. This is a long life battle with yourself. The song is haunting and almost hard to listen to because it digs so deep into this person. It feels like something you're not supposed to witness. And in that moment at 11:45, 12 o'clock-ish, where the entire world had been invited by Drake to hear his diss track, everyone else was paying attention to what Kendrick had did to Drake and was shaken by the experience. Now, as of writing, the story about Drake's daughter has yet to been proven true. In any way, that's better than Twitter gossip and TikTok shorts. It's important to point out that this has not been proven true and could be a complete fabrication. But everything else in this song is not just plausible, but has evidence out there. Drake's father did abandon him and did come around later in his life asking for money in exchange for validating Drake's questionable connection to blackness. Drake did get peed on by a man in public and didn't do anything about it and just let it slide. Drake does do weird shit with young women. He did post hentai porn one time and had a dick pic of himself that was released through social media from some other group, but it's like, knowing how Drake moves, it's hard to feel like that was an innocent thing to happen. He even made a joke about it in Family Matters. But most significantly, Drake does and has always felt like a facade that is now spiraling and in need of help and therapy and someone to save him before he loses everything he worked for. Let's say you don't agree with most of that. There's plausible interpretations of those attacks that are maybe less negative. Maybe Drake just really likes to make friends with teenage girls and give them guidance. Maybe it wasn't a lot of pee that got on him. Either way, it's the strategy here that, to me, ended the entire battle for any reasonable person. But the worst thing, the most impressive and like shocking thing when you sit back and realize it, is that he stole Drake's momentum. They created scenes, they bought jewelry and bought a van that looks like the van from the cover of Good Kid, Mad City, and rented out a construction site to destroy the van, showing up in multiple places in Toronto and LA. The whole thing seems, I mean, I don't know how expensive it is to shoot a music video, but it had to be tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of $1,000s to do in a couple of days. Drake's diss isn't a complete dud. It's not that great, and I'll get to in a second, but there's people who even today will say that's the best song out of the battle, and it would have been a debate at least. It had a chance to be soaked in by the culture. Had all the different streamers had a chance to sit and react and hype up what they had just heard, God knows how this battle might be looked at. But instead, all of those streamers and vloggers and tweeters and TikTokers, every person that Drake had invited for a front row seat for what he thought was his crowning moment in his battle, were turned against him. It's some legit 40 Laws of Power Machiavellian shit. And it only had one flaw. It kind of made everybody feel bad.
He said Drake and Weinstein should rot in jail, bruh. I literally was like, midway through the song, I was like, yo, I don't even know if I want to know this information.
The song was so dark and foreboding and heavy that nobody wanted to have any more parts of the battle. People just kind of was like, all right, we're good. Thank you, Kendrick. You scared us. We're the hoes now. You scared all of us off. We're good. You win. We're going to move on. I even made a video about how all I really wanted was Euphoria, and Meet the Grams was a bit more than I was really interested in dealing with, but I get why he did it. But if you go back to Euphoria, he telegraphs the whole thing. So by May 4th afternoon, everybody was pretty much calling it a wrap. And also at that time, people started to finally dig into Family Matters. And while it's a good, catchy song with some great moments, as a diss track to Kendrick Lamar, it kind of rings hollow and falls short from my perspective. Again, my biased perspective, but it's my video. The problem with Family Matters is two main problems. Problem number one, which I'll get to in a second, is that only about 65% of the song is actually about Kendrick Lamar. And the other problem is that Drake clearly did not understand who he was dealing with and used a similar strategy that he did in Back to Back, which is, I'm not going to make really the most scathing, powerful diss track. I'm just going to make something catchy that you really want to listen to, and people will love it, and it'll be a hit, and that'll be enough to carry me over the finish line to win this battle. And it just shows in the lack of overall thought into a lot of his bars, or maybe his ghostwriter's bars, I don't know. He starts out by implying that Drake isn't a real gangster, which is well known. Like, it's funny that the people that support Drake in this battle, their constant critique early on before it got ugly was that, what's Kendrick gonna say that's new? Which is true, but also an indictment of how much bad shit we already know about Drake. But then Drake spends a lot of the early part of this track just saying stuff we already know about Kendrick that isn't even all that bad. Specifically, Kendrick isn't a real gangster, like I just said, which is well known, something Kendrick himself has said.
You know who really bangs the set? My nigga Chuck T. You know who really bangs the set? My nigga YG. He really bangs. Yeah, they really bang. Yeah. Black people, am I standing right? Is this right? Is this cool? Am I cool? Am I strong? Am I a man? Daddy, am I a man? Daddy, am I a man?
He then talks about Kendrick's wife being mixed like Drake is.
You the black messiah wiping up a mixed queen and hit vanilla cream to help out with your self-esteem.
Which I don't think is true. I'm pretty sure Whitney's mother is mixed, but her father is black. Please don't force me into some blood quantum nonsense, but I'm just saying, for all of you biracial isn't black people, I don't know what you would call that, but it's just inaccurate. The biggest faux pas, which illustrates other problems, is Drake's line about Kendrick rapping like he's trying to free the slaves.
Always rapping like you about to get the slaves freed. You just acting like an activist is make-believe.
For the argument that Drake is a part from the culture, it really shows through a bar like this. I can't imagine why Drake would feel like this was something that would land with most black Americans. And I imagine he probably wasn't thinking about us with it, because I mean, he don't be thinking about us in his music. And it's funny because he just got criticized about this For All the Dogs when he made a line about being whipped and chained like slaves with a girlfriend or something. I don't know. It's weird. And then he ends this first part of the song with speculation that Kendrick's son with Whitney is not actually his, but the child of Kendrick's longtime friend and collaborator, Dave Free. I'll come back to this.
I heard that one of them little kids might be Dave Free.
Also, more short jokes, which again, I appreciate the short jokes. I grew up watching Martin, but like, even without Meet the Grams, when you're comparing the attacks that Kendrick was making in Euphoria about Drake's whole existence, and Drake saying Kendrick is short. Yeah, so then we thankfully have a beat switch. After the beat switch, Drake spends 3 minutes of this 7-minute song going at all the other people involved with this beef. Future, The Weeknd, Metro Boomin, Rick Ross, A$AP Rocky. And I'm not gonna spend any time talking about this part of the song because it's not a real part of the battle. It really shouldn't have been there. By this time in the beef, a month into this entire conflict, all of those other figures had really been rendered pointless. None of them, except Rick Ross, had really said anything after the first initial conflict. It was a waste of time that I think really occurred to distract from the fact that Drake didn't really have a strong angle of attack on Kendrick. It was basically filler. I'm just keeping it real. It's the beach episode of battle rap. Finally, we get another beat switch and we get to the last part, and my favorite line of the whole song, the only area where Drake was like onto something, but he just didn't know how to land that plane. It starts with Kendrick has opened his mouth, somebody hand him a Pulitzer now or a Grammy right now or something. And I really love that line. That's just clever and petty in a really good way. It's a solid jab because it shows some actual analysis of the flaws and conflicts within Kendrick, him being this golden boy darling to the high art community in a way that's a little weird and kind of contradicting. Whether warranted or purposeful or not, Kendrick has this persona of being this massive, like black, almost radical figure. And you can't do that, but also get a Pulitzer Prize and get several Grammy Awards for your stuff. It's a paradox of sorts, but I don't think Drake had the capacity to truly break down that analysis to make it useful for him in this battle. There's some other good shots in this verse. It's a nice amount more impactful than the first 2 minutes of the song, but it ends mostly focused on accusations that Kendrick beats his wife.
When you put your hands on your girl, is it self-defense because she bigger than you?
The response to this has caused a lot of controversy because, just as I mentioned ago, Kendrick also implies a bombastic story about Drake having a daughter that is also greatly uncorroborated. The first thing I want to put out there is that there is an ugliness to the fact that both Kendrick and Drake resort to using women, black women specifically, as tools of war to get at each other. It's not good. It's not ideal, but it's also not the focus of this video. I'll leave some videos in the description that do get into that, but I want to move on. In terms of this battle and evaluating whether or not this was a good attack upon Kendrick, it really doesn't work without proof. And this isn't a like believe victim situation, which, by the way, Drake is not a person that's like that. He spent many a moment in the previous year implying that Meg Thee Stallion was a liar for saying she got shot by his friend Tory Lanez. So it's not like he actually cares about the safety of women. More specifically, this is the first time we've ever heard of any of this stuff about Kendrick. I don't put anything past any dude in the public. I grew up watching The Cosby Show and listening to R. Kelly in Chicago. In the time since I first written this script, we found out a whole lot of ugly shit about Puff Daddy. So sadly, none of these dudes are exempt from suspicion. Further, Kendrick is on the Hotep spectrum, possibly a Hebrew Israelite. It's hard to say, but from my personal experiences, being on that Hotep spectrum increases the possibility that you might have put hands on a woman by at least 15%. Lastly, Kendrick has definitely implied in the past that he's had a hard and ugly relationship with Whitney, and they've been together since high school. So there's no telling what could have happened, but without receipts and this being the alleged red button, it's hard to make these accusations land effectively as an attack on Kendrick when we don't have any reason to believe them other than Drake said it. And like, literally, after everything I've told you about this man, why the fuck would you believe him? Now, of course, the Drake stands in the audience are going to say, well, why should you believe any of this stuff about Drake? Because we have Google, because we know so much about Drake, because he's been caught red-handed on so many occasions that y'all said, what new could we say about Drake? We know this shit. You see the difference? So being as fair as possible to Family Matters, it's a really catchy song. That shit goes in the gym. If I need to push a sled or get through a last set of curls or something, Family Matters goes. That as much as I make fun of it, it's in my head because it's catchy. As a diss track, it's not very good. I'm sorry, if you think Family Matters is a really strong diss track against Kendrick Lamar, not Rick Ross or A$AP Rocky, Kendrick Lamar, you have to have not ever heard battle diss tracks before now. You can't have watched any type of battle rap, to be honest with you. And don't tell me that the battle rappers are all taking Drake's side because it was so good. Drake has paid a lot of them niggas in the past. They know what they're doing. No, when you go and you analyze the bars, you analyze the angles, you ask what was really done and said, and you compare it to what Kendrick did and said, it's not close. I'm sorry. So we really could have called it in the late afternoon in May after everybody had settled in and recognized what had happened. But Kendrick clearly was not finished. I remember going on a date with my wife, and on the way to the restaurant, she asked if I thought like the battle was over. And I said probably. But if for whatever reason Kendrick did drop again, it'd probably be something that was like a victory lap. We get to our restaurant and had just ordered food when my phone started blowing up with the news that Kendrick was doing his victory lap. And I remembered holding the phone up to my ear in a relatively nice restaurant. And I immediately knew from what I was hearing that it was different from my phone's little speaker, but I didn't realize how different this last diss track was till I got to my car.
I see dead people.
Monster Hunter Pete Ho, Depot, he rap nigga, he a freak throw. Man down, call like Ember Lambs, tell him breathe bro. Nail a nigga to the cross, he walk around like Tizo.
Not Like Us, unlike everything up to this point, is a trunk rattling, ass shaking street banger, the type of song that really hasn't been done in hip hop for like at least half a decade, if not longer. Kendrick, often criticized for being too complex, too inaccessible, hated for the fact that you have to sit and listen to him a bunch of times to catch all the layers. That's not the Kendrick we got here. Here he makes everything catchy and impactful and not just easy to digest, but really easy for a crowd of people who are probably dancing along with it to join in on the fun. With the most damaging part of the song being a bar with an A minor double entendre. I don't have to repeat it, you already know. The song further implicates Drake's concerning behavior with teenage girls, but also again at the end returns to his exploitative behavior regarding hip hop in general, pointing out how Drake has constantly used Atlanta artists in particular to siphon credibility and clout off of.
You ran to Atlanta when you need a few dollars. No, you're not a colleague, you're a fucking colonizer.
If there is a sound that is on the radio and making the people move, it probably is coming from Atlanta since basically the late 90s into the now, essentially. And Kendrick called Drake out for colonizing that sound for his own gain because the OVO sound, the Toronto sound, if you could call it that, it hits every once in a while, but like it's not universal like what we're getting from Atlanta. But if we're honest, any type of analysis of Not Like Us isn't really significant. What's important here is the nature and timing of this record. After most of the hip hop world spent all of this day tired and emotionally drained from the events of the previous night, this song dropped just in time for people to shake their ass to in the club. It was a guaranteed club banger from the moment the DJ Mustard tag hits, adding yet another perceived prominent enemy to the coalition against Drake. Like just watching the reaction videos shows you everything that this song really was.
Hey, let me say OV-ho. Say OV-ho. Then step this way, step that way, then step this way, step that way. Are you my friend? Are we locked in?
Within a couple of hours, there were already tons of videos of people dancing outside to the song and people playing it at Cubs, yelling that Drake is a pedophile. Drake's behavior with young girls, which even I as a Drake hater was only partially aware of, was suddenly universally understood and inescapable. He is now on the Mount Rushmore of pedos. This song spent weeks at #1 on the Billboard Top 100, like the first rap song to do that in a while. It's currently, as of recording, still #2 on the Top 100. All kinds of records for hip hop streams. I think several of those records were actually Drake's records to begin with. And it did something that everybody was expecting Drake to do. It made a cultural moment out of dissing another rapper. Kendrick had back-to-back the person that invented the back-to-back, and he low-key did it twice. For anyone on the fence, even some of the hardcore Drake stans, this was the L that they were trying to deny. They could not deny it anymore at this point. Drake had been outplayed and outmatched in every way. People for the rest of the summer, and yes, Button is right, going into HBCU fall, which is coming soon, will be playing this song, marching to it, strolling to it. We'll be singing the A minor line. Drake will never be able to escape these allegations. Kendrick had, without a doubt, won the battle. There was one more song released Sunday night of that weekend by Drake called The Heart Part 6. And it's really the nadir of this battle. In The Heart Part 6, named such as a play on Kendrick's Heart series of songs, Drake basically gives up. You can hear it in his voice. It sounds like you know when like your older cousins do something wrong to you and they have to come apologize in front of your grandma. That's the energy Drake has, except I don't think Drake's ever had that experience, so it sounds even worse. Everything in the bars and what he chooses to actually talk about or address in this, it's really a dispirited response that reveals the lack of depth that he has as a writer. Not as a lyricist or a rapper, but as a writer. This is why he has ghostwriters. I feel like he wrote this shit himself.
Hey, where y'all going?
In The Heart Part 6, Drake presents the highly illogical theory that is eventually disproven that he and his team don't have a mole and that they purposely planted all the previous information about his drug use, his Ozempic use, his long lost daughter, etc., which makes no sense at all. Firstly, there's no way possible they planted false information that would be that damning and then also didn't document the process that they did this to prove it and score points for it. We literally have more evidence for Drake using drugs than we do of Drake faking his drug use. They don't have any pictures. They didn't release any text exchanges, film it, any of it. And anybody, no shade, that thought that this was legit upon hearing it is pretty fucking stupid. It's probably why you like Drake in the first place. This whole angle came from Drake's fans on Reddit and Twitter. Like, they just made this shit up as a coping mechanism. For the days after this battle, what really was happening, Drake's fans started entering into QAnon mode. They were like, everything is a code. Everything is, oh, he's dropping again. He's not giving up. The boy is back. And it's like, nah, the nigga wasn't. He wasn't back, y'all. It was sad. Then after that, he basically just plays defense, saying that he's too rich and famous to be a PDF file, that he'd have been arrested already if he was. And I don't know, maybe Drake hasn't watched the news at all in the last 10 to 15 years and knows how being rich is one of the best ways to get away with being a PDF file. But, you know, again, I think he wrote this. No ghosts were involved in the writing of The Heart Part 6. I'm pretty sure about that. And then he returns to shit he had already said. Like, he didn't think of anything new to say in this second song. To be fair, maybe the whole Kendrick beats his wife angle would have had an impact if Family Matters would have been able to cook for a second. But when it didn't, returning back to it to say it again, like people didn't hear you the first time and didn't care. And then the saddest part is at the end, like, you know, a diss track is bad when the last 30, 45 seconds of it is just a person talking and just saying the things that they're feeling instead of spending the time to put it in a rap lyrics or whatever. And like, Drake has this moment where he says, this was good exercise, and then sniffs. It's like either it was coke and he's trying to hold back tears.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, this shit was some good exercise. Like, it's good to get out, get the pen working. You would be a worthy competitor if I was really a predator.
It's like, why did y'all leave that in? What did y'all think that would sound like to people in the moment? This is a bottom 5 diss track of all time. It's down there with Meek Mill's I Just Want to Know. So the battle was over, and that's how things stood for a month or so. Drake made a few cryptic Instagram posts, put out some embarrassing music, and mostly laid low.
Walk on Delilah, no, I'm late cause there's better traffic.
Only thing Kendrick did was speak out of college, and then maybe late May, early June, he announced the Pop Out, a concert event that he would hold in Inglewood, California on June 19th, aka Juneteenth. Juneteenth, for those who don't know, was a previously unofficial holiday that I really wish would have stayed that way, which celebrates the day where the news of emancipation for American slaves reached the last holdout slave owners in Texas. I have a lot of thoughts on this holiday and how it's become a federal holiday, resulting in problems. But the point here is that Kendrick wanted to use this moment as a symbolic victory lap now that the battle was officially pretty much over. The Pop-Out featured a bunch of local underground rappers from California, a few bigger stars from the West Coast, including relatively surprising appearances from Steve Lacy and Tyler, the Creator, a reunion of many of Kendrick's early career peers, a few West Coast local and major legends, and of course, Kendrick himself. And once again, this managed to serve as a meta thesis on the difference between Kendrick and Drake. It doesn't take much to make the connection between that cringe Free the Slaves bar and the symbolic significance of Juneteenth. Drake also name-dropped YG in Family Matters, only to have YG and come and perform at the show and dap up Kendrick on stage. Drake loves LeBron James and even has a tattoo of him. Yet here's LeBron in the crowd singing Not Like Us to the beat. Drake made all these allegations about Kendrick and his wife and kids and how they're not together, but there they are in the crowd cheering along. Drake even said he had more love in LA than Kendrick, yet here's a whole arena in unison singing about Drake being a PDF file downloader 5 times.
Trying to strike a chord, and it's probably...
But the biggest part was the way that this event showcased the difference in values between Drake and Kendrick. Drake took darn near a decade to even attempt to bring more attention to Toronto, his hometown, during his rap career. And since then has mostly just coordinated all power and resources that he has access to for his own needs. His record label, OVO Sound, barely has put out any music that isn't his from the artists that he's found, and half his artists haven't released anything at all. Many jokingly refer to OVO Sound as a sweatshop. Today, Toronto is more relevant than it used to be as a musical force for black people and hip hop in general, but it's not nearly where it should be, considering that the biggest rapper in the world for the last 15 years was from there. Meanwhile, Kendrick literally got Amazon to live stream for free while he had a gang truce ceremony on stage, unifying the whole of the country's biggest, most diverse state, at least for one moment, making his crowning moment not just about him, but about the culture. As a final nail in the coffin, or really celebration of hip hop winning, it couldn't be any better than that. This last image of all these black men and women and children on stage from a variety of different standpoints, unified for this photo, it's pretty damn powerful. It's a beautiful thing that the culture is able to give us when the culture is at its best. And that's where the whole of the beast stands today, as the most significant, entertaining, demonstrably one-sided rap battle, or even public feud in history, probably. Never could anyone have imagined that Drake would lose so handily, considering how big and popular he's been this entire time. But that's what happened. So now what? As I collected my thoughts about this battle, even in the immediate aftermath, me and many others noticed one glaring thing. Drake never called Kendrick a hotep. Did y'all notice that? Because he doesn't know what a hotep is. He doesn't know what a Hebrew Israelite is. Do you know, like the weird dudes yelling at white people in the park in any given major city in the country? That's someone who Kendrick Lamar associates with. These dudes from the Eric Andre video.
L. Ron Hubbard is the true God. Black, there is no hell.
There is no. Is that what? Is that part of my belief?
This is cringe. There's so much meat to pick at here if you know any better. But Drake wouldn't know, because Drake doesn't have a strong connection to Black American culture. He hasn't even tried to get it in the 10 years he's been here. When Kendrick released Not Like Us, the victory lap song, it wasn't effective just because it was a banger. It also illustrated an important point that many others have also mentioned in response videos about this. The title of the song, Not Like Us, is the whole point. It implies how Drake persistently does this colonizing behavior. You see this in the weirdo nonsense of him buying Pharrell's chain or Tupac's ring, the way he's always showed up to show everybody else that they're his favorite rapper, his extremely cynical responses to pretty much everything in hip hop just to save face or to make it look like he's a good guy, to make it so we never know who he is. That is the problem here. That is how Drake is not like us, because hip hop, one of its core essence factors has been realness, and that is literally the weakest part of Drake for most of his career. It's showing how Cali has a sound, and Atlanta has a sound, and New York has a sound, and even the UK has a sound. What is Canada's sound? Is it Scorpion? Is that what y'all are offering to us? The fact that that's a joke shows the problem and like the failure of Drake as a figure within hip hop. After 10, 15 years in the game at his level, we should know the OVO Canada Toronto sound. That should be just as relevant. People should be going to Toronto to get juice, just like they go to the Midwest or go to Atlanta and go to New York. Just like everybody right now has one drill beat, one Afro beat, one Atlanta beat, something else. Everybody should be getting at least something from OVO, something from 40. Is 40 making beats for anybody else? If he's not, that's what Drake should have been doing. But no, he was too busy fighting for that number one spot. He didn't want his legacy to be what he brought to the culture. He wanted his legacy to be his own career. In the beginning, Drake thought that if he acted well enough, rapped well enough, and made enough hits that he would be undeniable. And kind of that worked. But the culture as a whole, the purists still rejected him. So he smiled in everyone's face and he told everyone that they were his favorite. He put on the nice guy facade, but also acted like he was tough. He did songs with everyone who wanted one so they could siphon off his star power, and that still wasn't enough. A lot of Drake's fans will say, how dare all these people in the rap game use Drake to siphon clout off of and then diss him at this point in his career? And Yeah, they're actually right. It's kind of shitty that so many people took advantage of Drake's eagerness to please to make money off of him. But let's not forget that this was a quid pro quo. Drake was so eager to please because he wanted to be accepted. He clearly knew that this was the dynamic he needed to enter into so he could actually get on in the industry. And he's been making songs about not having any real friends since 2015, if not earlier. I think Drake truly felt that if he was good enough, that if he acted well enough and played his role, that he would eventually be accepted because he becomes so significant in the culture that he no longer have to take that type of treatment, that people would accept him for who he was and what he accomplished, and they still didn't. And when I look at the fact that so many artists rejected Drake initially, allowed themselves to be won over in the middle of his career, and are now again rejecting him, I can't help but side with a lot of Drake's fans there. Because when you think about it, going back to Kid and Play, I think a lot of people hated Drake because Drake reflected the same fakeness that they already had. So many of these rappers we know are acting, we know are putting on a facade, are performing this imaginary mythological black thug image for white audiences for the most part. And that makes me think that maybe the hatred of Drake on some level was just the hatred of the fact that he had mastered a role that they didn't want to play in the first place and was doing so good at it that it made their impersonation of this same thing not as effective. And there's some logic behind that, of course, because at least theirs was more authentic and Drake's was just this silly thing that he had done that never looked right to people that had any connection to it, but to white audiences it looked authentic enough, and I've already talked about that. But it still does speak to how this is not just a reflection of Drake's fakeness, but the fakeness of hip hop in general.
For the fans of hip hop who feel like, man, Drake's not really hip hop, it's like, well, in this world, I'm the closest thing you're probably gonna get to hip hop, so just let me infiltrate.
Joe Budden has never liked Drake. Charlemagne has never liked Drake. Funk Flex, Ebro, Jay-Z, Nas, DMX. Hell, I doubt Baby and Jay Prince ever liked Drake. All these rappers, all these black men that Drake wanted to be like, that Drake helped make hits for, that Drake took pictures with, they didn't mean that shit. Truth be told, low-key, a lot of them dudes are as fake as Drake was because they just wanted Drake's clout. Because if they really cared and liked Drake, if Jay Prince really liked Drake, he'd have said, hey, don't come to Houston and then run to New Orleans like you really from New Orleans. And then Baby would have said, hey, don't come to New Orleans and then run to Miami like you're really from Miami. And Ross would have said, don't come from Miami and then run to Atlanta like you're really from Atlanta. And Future would have told him the same thing, and so on. But they watched this dude make a clown of himself for the last 10 years. Yes, Drake was super successful, to be honest, in the eyes of people who hip hop has little respect or regard for. But so many real hip hop artists, real purists, and people that actually cared about the culture, or even just people that didn't care much about the culture but cared about making money, they saw Drake as a clown even as they ate off his plate. Did anyone ever get the feeling while watching Drake do this album with 21 Savage that 21 Savage was looking at him side eye the whole time? The whole meme, 21, can you do something for me? Drake was tolerated. He was never loved. They were never his friends. When this battle was going on, so many other rappers and industry figures clearly expressed support for Kendrick, JPEG Mafia, Denzel Curry, Joe Buttons, let alone the many people actually dissing Drake. But for Drake, his first cosign was Uma Thurman. And then when it was halfway over, it was Tom McDonald. Half his OVO artists didn't say anything. This man worked so hard to try to be accepted. That's been his whole life. A biracial kid with an American father and in a Caribbean community in Canada. And then a Canadian biracial kid in Black American culture. Drake has rarely ever been accepted wherever he goes, at least not by those whose acceptance he really cares about. And regardless of him being a snake, regardless of my dislike for what he represents in hip hop, I feel bad about that for him. Just from a human standpoint, I can't imagine working so hard and doing so much to give him his credit for the completely wrong reason in a completely wrong way. Drake wanted to be loved and respected, and instead of earning that by being a genuine person or artist and connecting to the culture in a real way, in a way that he could, as himself, have laid claim to, instead he acted. But he was not as good of an actor as he might think he is. Y'all hear him say nigga with the hard ER in those interviews. Y'all see this goofy shit he used to do in his shows. And then you see these old videos of him being his true anti-black self.
Do you have like your words up there that like are kind of funky and weird?
The guys at our school, instead of addressing people like the group, like saying like, what are you guys doing? Say man's like you. It's really weird. Yeah, so man's like you are going to that, and then just means like the group.
Crew. That's interesting.
It's not. It's really ignorant.
A good actor would have done their research and preparation, because if there's one thing of hip hop culture that folks usually know, it's a poser. It's a fake. Drake was never a student of hip hop. He was never a true lover of it. He was just good at it. And this is why he was rejected initially, but allowed to stay around. He wasn't meant to be the centerpiece of hip hop, just a tool to make money for other people. And he accepted that deal. Those folks never trusted him, but they appreciated what he brought to the table. There was a segment where Wack 100 is talking to Academics about who had more love in LA, because Academics, in his infinite wisdom, really thought that Drake had more love in LA than Kendrick Lamar. And Wack said the following.
He might get more love in LA than Kendrick, not because...
Here's the difference. Drake comes out and costs Drake about $50,000, right? A day to move around LA. This is what he chooses to do. Kendrick can get in his car with his 501s, his white tee, and his Cortez and drive wherever he wants. Beverly Hills, Hollywood, Compton, Watts, South Central, Inglewood, wherever he wants. By his motherfucking self. Stop, get gas, go through the Jack in the Box drive-through, and all that. And the only thing he spent is the gas that he burned. That's it. So I don't know who gets more love, the nigga that need all the security or the nigga that can roam the man as he wants.
And that's the essence of what happened here. Is it love if you gotta pay? If you gotta lie to kick it, if you gotta try so hard to pretend to be something you're not in order to be accepted, how is that real love? That's what makes the last verse on Meet the Graham so powerful, because it spoke the truth that I don't even think Drake was ready to hear.
Cause you lied about religious views, you lied about your surgery, you lied about your accent and your past tense, all is perjury. You lied about your ghostwriters, you lied about your crew members, they all pussy, you lied on them, I know they all got you in them. You lied about your son, you lied about your daughter, You lied about them other kids that's out there hoping that you come. You lied about the only artist that can offer you some help. Fuck a rap battle, this a long life battle with yourself.
Is that real? You pretended to be my friend. You made me do this.
His acting job never worked. The culture and the industry just played along to get some good jams out of him. It's why when Kendrick emerged, they quickly moved him to the side. And had Kendrick never left, it would have never been a moment where Drake seriously was seen as the GOAT of his era, at least not by the culture. And when Kendrick returned, probably years after everyone was tired of Drake's shit, 2 years later, now we're here. And as much as I'm happy to see Drake fall, as much as I'm hopeful for what happens next with hip hop as we reduce the influence of Drake, as we cut off the tumor that he represents, I feel bad for him, because if he'd have just been real and honest, maybe he wouldn't have won Artist of the Decade, maybe he wouldn't have sold so many records, but he'd have the thing that he really actually wanted. He'd have the love and respect of the culture. Low key, he'd have been like J. Cole. I've avoided talking J. Cole in this because, again, the video's long enough, but let's look at the parallels here. Two biracial kids from regions without big hip-hop influence, both come out with more poppy and commercially viable music, both are looked at with a sense of otherness because they're not quite right in the eyes of hip-hop initially. But for Cole, instead of chasing clout and collabs, he literally went multiple albums with no features. He just kept doing him. He became one of the most honest and believable rappers in the game, to his detriment, because I personally have never been a huge J. Cole fan, because whatever he was giving for most of his career, I wasn't interested in. And he didn't care because he most was concerned with what it was that he was doing. People clown J. Cole for apologizing and bowing out of this beef before it really got started. But I said at the time, before seeing all this happen, that was some of the realest shit I had ever seen a rapper do. And for better or worse, that has been Cole's character almost from the jump. Honest, introspective, looking to truly help and leave a mark on his own terms, not by the terms of everyone else. Drake's record label, OVO, their artists have all been stagnant for years, and we have literally no clue what's happening with most of them. Meanwhile, J. Cole's artists on Dreamville are moving the culture forward and making amazing music that even surpasses his own. When Drake does a guest verse, it's for the stimulus package. When Cole does a guest verse, it's for the culture. Cole is everything Drake wanted to be. Today, Cole is respected as one of the best in the game and one of the best to ever do it. And he didn't get that from making the biggest hits. He didn't get that from even having classic albums. He did that just for showing who he truly was and us embracing that. But Drake could never be Cole because Drake is fake and Cole is real. And nothing exposed this more than how this whole beef ended. The Sunday morning after Not Like Us dropped, I was feeling amazing. Not just on some hater shit, but on some hopeful shit. I had just watched one of hip hop's biggest false idols be openly rejected by the culture. I saw people who hadn't even bothered to sit down and actually listen to lyrics. People that said Kendrick is boring without ever actually hearing any of his music, sit down and analyze just how great he's been for the last several years, and opened up the door for that to continue with other artists that they've been overlooking for this entire time. Shout out to Jay Smooth. He said in his video that a reality where the core elements of hip hop, where people are looking through rap lyrics with a fine tooth comb to analyze them, where hip hop has become an art form again and not just a vibe. That's any rap nerd's dream. I also watched Talib Kweli on Math Hoffa's podcast, and he talked about how after Kanye, paradoxically but pointedly, made conscious hip hop mainstream and big in the early 2000s, we saw a wave of conscious hip hop that carried a lot of rappers into stardom that maybe wouldn't have had it otherwise. But that in and of itself is why right now I'm not as enthusiastic. After the elation faded, for me, I came back to that line, that's what the culture feeling. And I think about that concept, the culture, or to be honest, what's left of it. Or to be real, was there ever really one to begin with? A little while back, I did a video on Kid and Play, and I pointed out that the rise of gangster rap and the erasure of more fun and poppy groups like Kid and Play wasn't exactly some big win for real hip hop. Yes, the foundation of gangster rap made way for the art form of hip hop to move forward and be better as more complex and talented and dynamic artists with a lot to say entered the hip hop world. But I don't know if it was fair to say that this form of hip hop, gangster rap, whether it was NWA way back then on to Nas and Jay-Z in hip hop's, heyday in the late 90s and early 2000s, were they actually any more real? All of those figures were very much putting on a fake act in their lyrics, rapping about things they didn't really do. NWA, Jay-Z, Nas, all of those people. What is real if the real hip hop is people rapping about a life that they don't live for the sake of being pop and commercially viable? People thought that pop and commercial rap would hold hip hop back in the late 80s and early 90s, but was gangster rap not commercial? Were these rappers not signed to record labels? Were they not greatly seeking financial gain through their art? Were they not just as beholden to the corporations and capitalism as the pop rappers we derided for not being real? In my heyday, the highly revered 90s era of hip hop, we got some of the most amazing music hip hop has ever produced. Illmatic, Illadelph Half-Life, The Diary, the No Limit era, Reasonable Doubt, AT-Aliens. I could go on for days, obviously. I feel blessed that I was alive during that era to consume that music, but that was art under duress, under commerce, under capitalism. The wildest thing is that many of those artists barely made a dime off of the timeless music they created. Like, it should be well known, and if it's not, understand, rappers then and now are mostly broke because they're being exploited by a corrupt system. And worst of all, many artists realize that the best way to truly get rich was to become the exploiter themselves. So you have the tradition since the 90s of rappers becoming record label executives and signing other artists so that they could exploit them, leading many a rapper to be signed to a rapper complaining to this day about missing funds. And what were the gatekeepers doing during that whole time too? Were they advocating for more power to the artists? Were they looking to tear down the structure that controlled hip hop and the industry? Were they looking to uplift the best and most beneficial art for Black people? No. They were protecting their own power and making sure they got their piece of the cut. They turned a blind eye to atrocity after atrocity happening to artists on their watch as rappers got screwed out of their money, as old rappers lived in poor health and decline, and as predators created trails of victims that we're just now finding out about. The gatekeepers kept the gates for their masters, not for the culture. And that's why, despite the fact that they might have wanted to stop a guy like Drake before he got started, the truth was the way the culture was functioning, Drake was inevitable. Hip hop purists and the culture and the gatekeepers act like Drake snuck in, but the reality is Drake was let in. They just didn't realize they wouldn't be able to control what he would bring into the game when he got there. If by chance Drake's time in the spotlight does end here, which I doubt, a different version is on the horizon. Maybe it's a white guy who raps just like him and doesn't care about Black people at all because he's inheriting an audience built by Drake. Maybe it's a Black woman who clearly hates much of hip hop's core audience and the men who make it, but knows how to perform its tricks for a white audience. Maybe it's someone we don't see coming at all. I don't know what it might look like, but if you're looking at this battle as the end of the reign of Drake, I want to show you this clip from a movie from my era called New Jack City and think about its message.
I'm not guilty. You're the one who's guilty. The lawmakers, the politicians, the Colombian drug lords, you're the one who's guilty. I mean, come on, let's kick the ballistics here. Ain't no Uzis made in Harlem. I mean, not one of us in here owns a poppy field. This thing is bigger than Nino Brown. This is big business. This is the American way.
So here it is, a possibly 3-hour-long anti-Drake video. And I couldn't be more happy that it's done. And the only reason that it was able to get done is because of my streaming service, Nebula. So right now you might be saying to yourself, did I just watch a whole 3-hour video about a rap battle? Yes, you did. Welcome to the club. You're officially a video essayist enjoyer. You might be wondering what that means. Maybe it means that you'll enjoy this near 4-hour video made by probably most would say one of the best video essayists around, Hbomberguy, that doesn't just look at one guy, but 4 different guys and how they've plagiarized their way to YouTube success. And maybe for the sake of time, you should watch it on my streaming service, Nebula. That way you can watch it ad-free so that the time goes by a little bit faster and the flow of the video is cut up less. The video essay is a genre that kind of blends a documentary with a podcast, investigative journalism, news editorials, and in some cases, one-man shows. It's hard to explain, and it's kind of a new creation that was born here on YouTube, but just because it was born here, that doesn't mean YouTube is the best place for you to continue exploring this type of content. If you want to find more independent creators like myself or Hbomberguy making some of the most dynamic and interesting content online right now, you should definitely check out my streaming service, Nebula. As I just said, YouTube is the platform where this type of video was born. But YouTube is also the place where you get, hair tutorials and cooking tutorials and video game let's plays. It's not always the ideal place for ambitious creators trying to produce real creative artistic work. YouTube is incredibly strict and downright unfair with its rules around copyright in terms of what's appropriate for their platform and what types of videos even have the chance to be seen. So for me, that means when I make videos talking about, say, the police or Black movies or Black music, I have to meticulously censor them in order for them to be viable on YouTube's platform. For this video, I had to put in a lot of work to make sure that little snippets of music that I use could get past copyright. But on Nebula, if you watch this video, you'll hear the real music as it was intended. And it's not just me, there's 200 other creators on Nebula, all making this type of dynamic content in a variety of genres. We have several other creators in the realm of music like Polyphonic and Volksgeist. There's also real life lore and modern conflicts who deliver hard-hitting analysis on world history. There's Tierzu and Bobby Broccoli and others bringing in science and technology in ways that you can't imagine. And of course, there's media and cultural analysis like myself, Lindsay Ellis, Foreign Man and the Foreign Man, T1J, and so many others. But more than anything, when you sign up for Nebula, you are giving direct support to an independent creator and creator-owned company. We are not big tech. We are not owned by Google or Disney or Time Warner or anyone. It's just us. And we are using the money from you all to keep our projects moving along. And we do have major projects on the way, including independent films, more in-depth documentaries, podcasts, and we even released a stage play. We are making the type of content that's hard to create anywhere, let alone on YouTube, and I can only do my part with your direct support. So please go to go.nebula.tv/FD Signifier to get 40% off a month-to-month subscription, or just click that link in the description, and in doing so, you'll be helping independent creators get more content just like this on the way, in the way that it was meant to be watched. Thank you so much for watching the video. Thank you so much to Nebula for sponsoring this video. Peace.